Chapter 1972 Hometown? Both parties continued to fight again. However, it was different then. Great Emperor Zisu were suppressed by Lord Spirit Sound. There was only Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze left. Jian Wushuang sent Jian Yi to keep Great Emperor Colored Glaze occupied. As for Abysmal Saint Master, Jian Wushuang had dealt with him with the assistance of the 5 godly spirits. Previously, it was only myself and I was not your match. But now, Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. At the same time, the first ancient star in between his eyebrows immediately broke. Among the 7 ancient stars he had only broken one. It was nothing as it was quite easy to recover it. With the breaking of the ancient star, Jian Wushuang's overall power instantly increased tremendously. In addition to that, he had the 5 godly spirits with him. Besides, Lord Spirit Sound, who already suppressed Great Emperor Zisu, as she suppressed Great Emperor Zisu, she could perform some sickle light occasionally to the surrounding battlefield. That gave some Jian Wushuang some assistance. Fight. Jian Wushuang was billowing with murderous intention and they fought with Abysmal Saint Master directly. Then, Abysmal Saint Master wasn't as relaxed as before. It would be impossible if he wanted to trap Jian Wushuang as easily. ***. My power had yet to reach my peak status. Alone, it would be impossible for me to take Jian Wushuang down. Abysmal Saint Master's face grew grave and he couldn't help but steal a glance at the battlefield by the side. He realized that Great Emperor Colored Glaze's situation was quite similar to his. As for Great Emperor Zisu, it was one-sided. Where did Jian Wushuang find such powerful assistance? Abysmal Saint Master was roaring in his head. Previously, he had had the terrifying Emperor 13 to help him. Now Jian Wushuang had another Great Emperor expert who was only stronger, not weaker, than when he was at his peak. How long had Jian Wushuang lived for? How could he be that capable? We're in big trouble. Great Emperor Colored Glaze looked cold as he looked around. With the assistance of that person, the 3 of us couldn't even lay a foot in Greenfire World, let alone conquering Greenfire World. That was true. The 3 of them were held back entirely. It was impossible to barge into Greenfire World. On top of that, one should know that the news about Greenfire World had spread all over. Although the 3 of them had rushed there, the speed of other experts from various forces absolutely wouldn't be any slower. As long as they couldn't conquer Greenfire World at the first instant, it would be difficult for them to achieve the greatest advantage. As expected, the experts from Eternal Chaotic World arrived in a short while. Those who rushed over were merely 3 ordinary Sir Gods. They were closer to Greenfire World and they rushed over when they had found out about the existence of Greenfire World. When they arrived, they saw Greenfire World and they also saw a shocking battle. My goodness, this is... Great Emperors, there are so many Great Emperors. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze, also the infamous Sword Emperor, his sword servant became a Great Emperor as well. As for the enchanting woman in the red robe, I don't know her but she is powerful. She could even suppress Great Emperor Zisu directly? What are they doing? Why are they fighting? The few Sir Gods were astonished but mostly confused. Very soon they spread the news about the war. Most of the experts from various forces that were rushing over to Greenfire World were shocked at the news and they traveled at an even faster speed. On the battlefield, regardless of if it was the 3 Great Emperors or those from Jian Wushuang's side, they noticed the surrounding experts. Jian Wushuang didn't care much. However, Abysmal Saint Master and Great Emperor Colored Glaze's faces grew grave. They knew that it might be only a few Sir Gods who had arrived but in no time, there would be more experts. Even, in the end, the entire Sanctuary Alliance or the entire Eternal Chaotic World would be there. That was fact. There were more and more experts gathering around Greenfire World. Most of them were Sir Gods and Emperor Gods. In no time rumble. A vast figure descended from the sky and there was an aura of Great Emperor level that spread. Purple Moon? It's Great Emperor Purple Moon. Every expert was impressed. Experts from both parties were fighting a battle and they noticed the arrival of Great Emperor Purple Moon. Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze were unhappy. But as Great Emperor Purple Moon had already arrived, it would be impossible if the 3 of them wanted to conquer Greenfire World first. The 3 of them immediately stopped. What? Don't you want to continue the fight? Jian Wushuang's face was cold as he glared at the 3 Great Emperors. Jian Wushuang, you're just lucky. You got help from all the experts all the time, Abysmal Saint Master said coldly and he couldn't help but look at Lord Spirit Sound. Until then, Lord Spirit Sound had seemed to be extremely at ease all this while. He wondered if she had really revealed all her power. Regardless, whatever power she displayed would be enough to gain Abysmal Saint Master's attention. Humph, being able to get help from experts is my skill as well, Jianghu Shuang replied coldly. Even though they had stopped fighting, both parties were still oppositional. Everyone please calm down. Great Emperor Purple Moon walked over and said with a curious look as he watched both parties, "What's going on?" "What's going on?" asked Jianghu Shuang. Abysmal Saint Master said coldly, "He carries a big secret with him." Big secret? Great Emperor Purple Moon was confused. It seems that Purple Moon has yet to know. Let me tell you, Greenfire World is Jianghu Shuang's hometown. When I found out Greenfire World's unique point, I wanted to check it out at Greenfire World at the first instant. But in the end he chased me out. I had no choice and asked Abysmal and Zisu to come along with me. But in the end. Hee, you saw that yourself, Great Emperor Colored Glaze smiled coldly. The moment Great Emperor Colored Glaze said that, everyone at the scene was stunned. There were gazes that were redirected to Jianghu Shuang in shock. Greenfire World was Jianghu Shuang's hometown? Was it a joke? Looking at the gazes that flew to him, Jianghu Shuang had no intention of hiding. He replied, "Yes, Greenfire World is really my hometown. As such, without my permission, don't even think about entering Greenfire World." All experts at the scene went quiet when they heard that. Even Great Emperor Purple Moon's face changed. If Greenfire World was really as magical as the rumor said and had limitless possibilities, Sanctuary Alliance definitely would try to figure a way to conquer it. Then make some changes to make Greenfire World a brand new sanctuary. In other words, Sanctuary Alliance would take control of everything there. However, Greenfire World was Jianghu Shuang's hometown. Chapter 1973. All parties arrived. After a while, Great Emperor Purple Moon finally spoke again. "Everyone, this is very serious. From my point of view, let's wait until the others arrive before we discuss this." Then Great Emperor Purple Moon stole a glance at Jianghu Shuang. From the bottom of his heart, Great Emperor Purple Moon would be on Jianghu Shuang's side. However, Greenfire World was associated with many parties. He who was an ordinary Great Emperor couldn't do much. Hearing what Great Emperor Purple Moon had said, the three of them nodded simultaneously. "Alright then. Let's wait until the others arrive." Abysmal Saint Master looked cold. Their initial plan had failed anyway. It would be impossible if they wanted to conquer Greenfire World and get the biggest advantage. However, even if they couldn't get the biggest advantage, they absolutely wouldn't want to see Jianghu Shuang continue to conquer such a great treasure. As for Jianghu Shuang, he stood there without saying a word. He knew that it was a matter of time until he would have to deal with experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World. Hence, he had been well prepared since long ago. As time flew past, there were more and more experts that came to the void around Greenfire World. The experts who came saw Greenfire World and they found out about the relationship between Jianghu Shuang and Greenfire World. Suddenly there was shock and astonishment. No wonder Sword Emperor was so talented. It turns out that his hometown is Greenfire World. It is only a unique place like Greenfire World that could nurture a genius like him. Plus, before the news of the ancient battlefield spread, Greenfire World possessed it. Sword Emperor definitely received great advantage from the ancient battlefield. That's a definite. I have heard of Sword Emperor's billowing skills long ago. I think all his skills are from this ancient battlefield. Previously, during the war in Lineage of Star, they brought out so many Dao soldiers, and where were they from? There's no doubt they were definitely obtained from this ancient battlefield. Countless experts were talking about it. Then, most of the experts who were wandering in the ancient battlefield had already arrived outside Greenfire World. Even great emperors besides Great Emperor Purple Moon, there were another 3. Including Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu and Great Emperor Colored Glaze, the 15 Great Emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, there were 7 of them there. As for the remaining Great Emperors, either they cultivated in seclusion all year round or they were staying back to guard Eternal Chaotic World. Plus, these were merely human cultivators' camp. Those special tribes also had a large number of experts rushing over. Especially the top 4 peak tribes that had Great Emperors standing guard. The 4 peak tribes conquered a piece of sanctuary each among the special tribes. Their positions and foundations were extraordinary. The 4 peak tribes were Ancient Gods, Sky-Devouring Clan, God-Eater and Black-Water Dragon. Among the 4, Ancient Gods were widely acknowledged as the best at close-body combat. On top of that, they were also recognized as the most prosperous tribe. Their Ancient God Emperor was once known to be the top overlord in the First Era as well. Sky-Devouring Clan was known to be the most barbaric tribe. They grew through consumption of various bloodline powers. They had the smallest population, but their overall power were second to ancient gods. The remaining God-Eater and Blackwater Dragon tribes were ancient, and they were extremely powerful as well. Then, the four peak tribes had great emperors attending the scene personally. The great emperor from ancient god tribe who came had a total of 9 stars in between his eyebrows. Behind the 9-star ancient god, Jian Wushuang saw 2 familiar faces. They were King Gutong and King Guyu. King Gutong were friends with Jian Wushuang. It could be said that besides Holocaust Sect and Acheron Palace, who were always in the dark, all experts from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were there. And they only had one target, which was Green Fire World. However, if they wanted to step foot in Green Fire World, they had to first wipe out the only hindrance, which was Jian Wushuang, who blocked the Green Fire World. Jian Wushuang, Lord Spirit Sound, and Jian Yi stood side by side. His gaze was cold as he glared at the thickly dotted experts in front of him. He felt an unprecedented pressure. I'm impressed. So many chaotic realms. I think more than half of the cultivators of the chaotic realm from this era gathered here. Lord Spirit Sound was astonished. She looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, Jian Wushuang, there are so many people who are eyeing Green Fire World. Are you confident you can protect it? I don't know. Jian Wushuang shook his head. You don't know. Lord Spirit Sound creased his eyebrows. I really don't know, but I can play a bet. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and there was determination in his eyes. Jian Wushuang's body immediately moved and he flew to the experts in front. When he arrived before the experts, Jian Wushuang stopped and took a deep breath. He bowed to the experts and spoke, I greet you all. Everyone should be here for my Green Fire World. However, it's a pity that Green Fire World is only a small temple. It can't contain so many experts. Hence, I apologize for the shortcomings in our hospitality. Sword Emperor. There was a cold voice. A tall man who was red-skinned as though he was covered in flames stood out. The tall man was called Yen Zun, one of the great emperor from Sanctuary Alliance. However, there were 15 great emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, and Yen Zun happened to be in the 15th place. Then Yen Zun said with a loud and clear voice, Green Fire World is the core of the battlefield. It contains boundless potential and magic. Such an important place shouldn't be conquered by you alone. Please hand over Green Fire World. You are also a member of Sanctuary Alliance. As long as you hand over Green Fire World, Sanctuary Alliance won't mistreat you too. We can discuss to let you keep territory in Green Fire World. What do you think? Keep territory? I wonder, Mr. Yen Zun, how about the cultivators in Green Fire World? Jian Wushuang asked. This. Yen Zun thought for a while and answered, if Green Fire World were to be that magical, Sanctuary Alliance would definitely remake a brand new sanctuary that is far better than any one of the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. It might even surpass Thunderbolt Island. However, such an important place isn't suitable for any ordinary cultivators there. However, don't worry. We will find a way to relocate all your cultivators in Green Fire World. I assure you that they will continue to cultivate and grow. Although it was Yen Zun's speech, he had been in Sanctuary Alliance long enough that he was certain that the result would be as such after the discussion among the higher-ups from Sanctuary Alliance. However, the result was definitely not something Jian Wushuang wished for. As expected, Jian Wushuang's face grew cold. Chapter 1974 Bloodline is of Paramoun. To make Green Fire World into another cultivation sanctuary far beyond Thunderbolt Island? Jian Wushuang believed that Green Fire World absolutely had the potential. Might be even better. However, to create Cultivation Sanctuary, it would require all cultivators in Green Fire World to relocate. Firstly, these cultivators were nurtured in Green Fire World to begin with and it was their hometown. Why would they need to be relocated? Who would be willing to leave their home? Besides, Green Fire World was a big world. It contained many ancient worlds in different sizes. In accumulation, how many cultivators would there be? With so many cultivators, even if they really relocated, just how difficult would it be? During the process of relocation, it was inevitable that a large number of cultivators or innocent people would die. The people had been plunged into an abyss of misery anyway. The condition that Yen Zun proposed was considered generous in Sanctuary Alliance. If it wasn't for Jian Wushuang, they would have conquered Green Fire World by force with thunderous measures. As for cultivators in Green Fire World, Sanctuary Alliance would at most leave those who were stronger and more talented. The remaining, including countless living spirits in ancient worlds, would be wiped out straight away. That was Sanctuary Alliance's cruelty. To Sanctuary Alliance, they only cared about the safety of the entire eternal chaotic world. As for cultivators in the big world, they wouldn't care. Sanctuary Alliance didn't care, but Jian Wushuang couldn't not care, because Greenfire World was his hometown. How about the special tribes? Jian Wushuang looked at the experts who were from special tribes. Sanctuary Alliance want to make Greenfire World into a brand new sanctuary, we naturally want to stop them. However, if Greenfire World were to be that magical, the few of our special tribes would only need Sanctuary Alliance to agree to segregate a territory for us to cultivate, the great emperor from Sky Devouring Clan spoke. Sanctuary Alliance and the special tribe had always been keeping a mutual position. Plus, there were times where if it concerned the safety of Eternal Chaotic World, both parties would work together. Hence, there wasn't any hatred nor resentment. Just like Greenfire World, a special place as the special tribes listed their conditions, Sanctuary Alliance would mostly agree. It seemed that the cultivators in Greenfire World are destined to be relocated? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold. Jian Wushuang, don't be stubborn. With you alone you won't be able to keep Greenfire World, Yen Sun advised. Jian Wushuang, do you still want to be stubborn about this? Abysmal Saint Master smiled coldly. He was dying for Jian Wushuang to persist. Then all experts from various forces would be raging with anger, especially the special tribe that was hot-tempered. It'd be best if they were to kill Jian Wushuang straight away. Sword Emperor, hand over Greenfire World. Considering the fact that you carry the bloodline of Ancient God, I guarantee that if you were to be willing to hand out Greenfire World, they absolutely won't have the guts to do anything to the cultivators in Greenfire World. The 9-star Ancient God who lead the Ancient God spoke loud and clear. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but look at the 9-star Ancient God. He had heard long ago that there was a 9-star Ancient God in Ancient God tribe, but it was his first time seeing one. I wonder how I should address you? Jian Wushuang asked. I am King Luo Yu. The 9-star Ancient God replied. King Luo Yu? The Luo family? Jian Wushuang was surprised. I once received the blood essence inheritance of an 8-star Ancient God, King Luo Zhen. He should be related to you, right? King Luo Zhen? Your Ancient God bloodline is from King Luo Zhen? King Luo Yes face changed. King Luo Yu, I once visited Ancient God Sanctuary and I know of an Ancient God too. From what I know, Ancient God tribe has an iron discipline whereby bloodline is of paramount importance. Regardless of their strength, as long as their bloodline is stronger than yours, you have to be respectful and you even have to listen to their command. I wonder if that's true, Jian Wushuang said. It is, King Luo Yu nodded. Ancient God tribe is a tribe that honors the bloodline. We believed in Ancient God Emperor from the first era. Over the years this has never changed. If so, there was a strange light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Then, vroom. There was a boundless bloodline power that exploded from Jian Wushuang's body. The bloodline power was extremely intense and vast. It was also very powerful. Jian Wushuang naturally let his ancient tribe bloodline power to flow out then. Ancient tribe was one of the 4 god tribes back in ancient times. It was a complete version of Ancient God. Ancient God was merely a faint bloodline that was segregated from Ancient tribe. In terms of purity of the bloodline, Ancient tribe bloodline was naturally above Ancient God. Then, as Jian Wushuang displayed his bloodline power, the experts from various forces didn't care but only thought that Jian Wushuang's bloodline power was ferocious. However, the ancient gods at the scene, for instance, King Gu Tong and King Gu Yu, and even 9-star ancient god King Luo Yu, were instantly dumbfounded. This bloodline, royal bloodline, wouldn't be mistaken. A bloodline aura that was sufficient for me to yield to. It is absolutely royal bloodline. It might even be purer than royal bloodline. How is this possible? The experts from Ancient God tribe looked at Jian Wushuang in astonishment. They had known long ago that Jian Wushuang carried Ancient God bloodline and it was royal Ancient God. However, they had never expected that Jian Wushuang's bloodline would have heightened again and reached a brand new level. King Luo Yu, do you remember what you said earlier? Jian Wushuang looked at King Luo Yu coldly. The expression on King Luo Yu's face was complicated. After he struggled for a bit emotionally, he let out a long sigh. King Luo Yu lifted his head again and the look he gave to Jian Wushuang had a tinge of reverence. Sword Emperor, although I have no idea how you obtained the bloodline, no doubt, the purity of your bloodline is above mine. There is no one in Ancient God tribe that could compare to it favorably. In history, Ancient God tribe has always honored bloodline above all. If you are willing to, you can head back to Ancient God Sanctuary with me and I will gather all masters of 9 cities to discuss taking you as out new Ancient God Emperor. I believe no one would dare to suspect. Jian Wushuang was surprised by his reply. The surrounding experts from various forces burst into an uproar. Although they had known since long ago that ancient god honored bloodline the most, King Luoyu was a great emperor. His power was far stronger than Jian Wushuang's, and he should be on the top among ancient god tribe. At such a crucial moment, he could totally ignore it if he were to meet anyone who had a higher bloodline than him. However, they never expected that King Luoyu would immediately show his willingness to take Jian Wushuang as the new ancient god emperor. Chapter 1975 Astonished. This King Luoyu is so stupid. Many of them thought to themselves. They thought King Luoyu was stupid. However, they weren't people of ancient god tribe. They naturally wouldn't understand how much ancient god tribe values bloodline. Actually, not only ancient god tribe but also the other three peak tribes, they valued bloodline as important too. But just not as ridiculous as ancient god tribe. As for Jian Wushuang, he was shocked as well. He never thought that King Luoyu would recognize his bloodline and immediately take him on as the new ancient god emperor. King Luoyu, as you recognize my bloodline, who would you stand by if I wanted to protect Greenfire World? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course by your side, King Luoyu said without hesitation. At the same time, his eyes glowed with golden luster as he looked at everyone around. Listen up, although Sword Emperor has yet to become Ancient God Emperor, his bloodline is right there. We Ancient God tribe has to follow his lead from today onwards. Whoever goes against Sword Emperor will be our enemy too. King Luoyu was determined and firm with his decision. He didn't leave any space for negotiation. There were many people who creased their eyebrows at the sight. Ancient God tribe was one of the strongest tribes among the unique tribes. It was said that there was not only a 9-star ancient god, there were also 8-star ancient gods and 7-star ancient gods. With such powerful force, there was no one who dared to ignore them. Humph, so what if the ancient god tribe is supporting you? Today, Sanctuary Alliance and many other unique tribes are here to conquer Greenfire World. With ancient god tribe alone, you can't stop us. Colored Glaze Great Emperor's cold voice reverberated in the air. The surrounding people looked rather enthusiastic. It was true. Almost all top forces in Eternal Chaotic World gathered there, including Sanctuary Alliance. With Ancient God Tribe alone, he didn't stand a chance for all forces and experts to give way. Jian Wushuang, I'll ask you for the last time. Are you moving away? Colored Glaze Great Emperor stared at Jian Wushuang with a cold look. All forces and experts at the scene were staring at Jian Wushuang. There were chilly gleams in their eyes. Just then Jian Wushuang, who had everyone's attention, lifted his head again. On his cold face there was a tinge of madness. He didn't speak and only beckoned to Greenfire World nearby. Jian Nantian in Greenfire World's formation saw Jian Wushuang's signal and he immediately plunged to Jian Wushuang. When he appeared next to Jian Wushuang, he waved and took out a pearl. The pearl looked murky as it contained a unique aura. Looking at the pearl, the madness in Jian Wushuang's eyes flowed out. He glared at the countless experts before him. These experts could almost represent the entire Eternal Chaotic World. Then he was fighting against the entire Eternal Chaotic World alone. Even so, he wasn't nervous or afraid. There was only determination and madness. Everyone, let me show you something. You'll definitely be very emotional after you see it. Jian Wushuang smiled maliciously and handed the blurry pearl over. All the experts at the scene couldn't help but look at the pearl. Everyone started to feel it using their soul power. Through the pearl, they could instantly sense the existence of the surrounding ancient battlefield. Not only could they sense it, but they could also recognize it clearly. The boundless ancient battlefield was before all experts' eyes then. So huge. This ancient battlefield is so vast. It's too vast. The area that we searched is only a drop in a bucket compared to the entire ancient battlefield. With such a vast ancient battlefield, it is at least 10 times bigger than the one in ancient Mystery Land. All experts at the scene were astonished. After a short while, they noticed a huge object on the ancient battlefield. Skull. An extremely huge skull. A skull that was countless times bigger than any other world's. Just like Greenfire World, it was a world that considered quite large in size. However, Greenfire World looked only like a small spot in between the eyebrows of the skull. How is this possible? Unbelievable, this is simply unbelievable. Who is this? Whose head is this? Whose head could be that huge? Could it be a head of an expert from ancient times? Impossible. Even though there were countless experts during ancient times, there shouldn't be any expert's body that could be that huge in size. Dumbfounded, everyone was dumbfounded. They were shocked by the huge skull. Actually, they couldn't be blamed. When Jian Wushuang first saw the skull, he was shocked too. He found it unbelievable too. The skull was too shocking. Compared to the boundless ancient battlefield, the skull was even more astonishing. The few great emperors at the scene, such as Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zisu, Colored Glaze Great Emperor, Yenzun, King Luoyu and other great emperors from the other 3 special tribes, were all gawking at the sight. As great emperors they were extremely experienced. However, it was their first time coming across such an unbelievable sight. However, after a short while of astonishment, all experts at the scene burst with excitement. Excitement? Yeah, excitement. They had previously only known that the ancient battlefield contained boundless opportunities, but they couldn't determine just how impressive the place was. However, as they saw the entire ancient battlefield through the pearl, then, they had a better understanding of the ancient battlefield. Merely the boundless territory size was enough to make them go crazy. The unbelievable skill shocked them even further. One should know that the more astonishing it was, the more unusual the skull was. There was no doubt that the territory where the skull was located absolutely contained unbelievable opportunities. At the same time, they saw that the location of Greenfire World was right in between the eyebrows of the skull, while the skull was located in the core of the ancient battlefield. Even a silly man could see the value of Greenfire World. It was absolutely much greater than what they had guessed earlier. It was truly a huge treasure that could drive the entire Sanctuary Alliance crazy. The experts' gazes were burning with enthusiasm. It was unprecedented enthusiasm. Even the great emperors were burning enthusiastically. Jian Wushuang smirked coldly at the sight. All of you are enjoying the view of this ancient battlefield, enjoying the discovery of the huge skull? Didn't you notice anything different in the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield? Everyone was caught off guard. Then they looked into the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield. Chapter 1976 Grand Formation Spacetime Storm. The experts fixed their gazes upon the ancient battlefield, but they had never bothered with the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield. When they heard Jian Wushuang's comment, they looked at the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield through the light. Then they noticed the difference in the void. Spacetime storm? Such a huge spacetime storm, and this spacetime storm covered the entire battlefield? My goodness, such a huge spacetime storm. I have lived for over 1,000,000 years, but it is my first time seeing this. Many experts at the scene exclaimed in surprise. The ancient battlefield was huge, but the spacetime storm could engulf the entire battlefield. Its size could be well imagined. Of course, with such a huge spacetime storm, the energy contained was definitely shocking too. Just a spacetime storm? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Among the experts, there were people who immediately found the unique point of the spacetime storm. No, not just a spacetime storm, there is also a grand formation. In the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield, there is a grand formation. The formation merged into one with the surrounding spacetime storm. That's why it is hardly noticeable, an Emperor God explained. The Emperor God was an accomplished one in formations. He said, and the other experts had found the trace of the grand formation. There is really a formation, and the formation is profound. A huge formation merged flawlessly with the spacetime storm? Who set up this grand formation? Unbelievable, the grand formation is simply unbelievable. There were experts exclaiming in surprise again. The exclamations were mostly from those who were accomplished in formations. Because they had a better understanding of formations, they knew how difficult it was to set up such a huge formation. To be able to merge the formation with the surrounding boundless spacetime storm flawlessly, it was shocking. Impossible. This is impossible. How could such a terrifying spacetime storm merge with the formation flawlessly? Forget about us from the second era, even in the first era, there was absolutely no one who could set up such great formation. Even in the ancient era, he would definitely be a top almighty in formations to be able to set up such a great formation. Everyone was astonished. All their gazes were surprised. Regardless of if they understood formation or not, as long as one was experienced, they should be able to tell how unbelievable the grand formation was. At least to all experts in Eternal Chaotic World, it was simply a dream to merge a grand formation to spacetime storm. But then, someone had done it. Jian Wushuang looked at the expert's response in front of him with a faint smile. His voice slowly reverberated in the universe. Can you all see clearly? Are you astonished? Are you excited? Do you find it unbelievable? His voice had a tinge of disdain. All experts became quiet. All the gazes were fixed upon Jian Wushuang again. They didn't know what Jian Wushuang's purpose was when he took out the pearl and showed them the true appearance of the ancient battlefield, the surrounding spacetime storm and the grand formation. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang waved and his willpower moved. Rumble. Heaven and earth quivered. There was a life-destroying aura that suddenly spread from the void above. The experts at the scene were stunned and looked towards the light. In the end, they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw in the surrounding void on the ancient battlefield, the huge spacetime storm that was originally stable, all this while suddenly became extremely violent. Walala. Boundless spacetime storm started churning in madness to destroy the earth. The extermination aura that filled the universe and the entire ancient battlefield was from the spacetime storm. At that very moment, everyone could feel the aura that the spacetime storm gave out, an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. At the same time, they could faintly feel the power contained in spacetime storm. Plus, the power had already started brewing and becoming very aggressive, and it continued to accumulate. It was as though the entire spacetime storm would rain down on the ancient battlefield the very next moment. The scene shocked everyone. What is going on? Such terrifying power. If it were to rain down at the ancient battlefield, I wonder if the ancient battlefield could still survive. Gone. It'd be gone. If the power were to explode, the ancient battlefield would absolutely turn into a flatland. There wouldn't be anything left. Many experts answered. Then all the gazes turned to look at one person. Jianghu Shuang. Jianghu Shuang. It was him who made the spacetime storm violent. What is he trying to do? The experts at the scene were staring with anger as they questioned him. Then there was unprecedented madness in Jianghu Shuang's eyes. His face grew red and his burst of malicious laughter suddenly filled the air. Ha, you finally knew to be anxious? Knew to be worried? All of you seemed pretty aggressive earlier. Jianghu Shuang, what did you do? Colored Glaze Great Emperor roared. What did I do? Colored Glaze Great Emperor still can't tell? Actually, it's nothing. It's very simple. I merely manipulated the formation around the ancient battlefield so that the formation could shake off the spacetime storm. But the spacetime storm is so powerful that it is inevitable that there is going to be power that overspills. Jianghu Shuang chuckled and spoke casually as though it was just a petty matter. However, many experts who studied formation at the scene stared as they heard Jianghu Shuang's reply. No. The Emperor God who noticed the formation roared. This formation was merged with the spacetime storm using an immeasurable method. The grand formation has become one with the spacetime storm. How could they be separated? Once they are separated, the grand formation will collapse instantly, then the spacetime storm will lose its balance and stir up a great commotion that will destroy the universe, destroying everything within the spacetime storm. The ancient battlefield has no space to struggle but will instantly be squashed into dust by the spacetime storm. All opportunities and treasures on this ancient battlefield, even all of us, will vanish in an instant. Stop it, Sword Emperor. Hurry up and stop it. Chapter 1977. Fight to death but not give in. Stop it. The Emperor God started shouting at him. The others quickly responded as well. Jianghu Shuang, stop it. Sword Emperor, don't act on impulse. We can discuss this. Jianghu Shuang, what are you trying to do? Don't forget that Green Fire World is on this ancient battlefield too. Many started bellowing in anger while there were angry gazes on Jianghu Shuang as well. In their anger there was a faint tinge of fear. The power of the spacetime storm was too terrifying. What? Do you know how to be afraid now? Jianghu Shuang sneered, but the spacetime storm didn't stop and became even more violent. The extermination aura from the void above and the surrounding became more intense. There were many experts at the scene who were shivering with fear because of the extermination aura. Jianghu Shuang's malicious laughter continued to reverberate. Actually, I didn't want to use this trump card. But it's a pity that you all are such bullies. You really think I am just a softy from Green Fire World? That everyone could pressure me as they wish? So what if you are Sanctuary Alliance? So what if there are unique tribes? Even if the entire eternal chaotic world's forces and great emperors gather here, so what? Green Fire World is my hometown. Whoever dares to lay a finger on it, I will kill him. You want the countless cultivators in Green Fire World to relocate and leave Green Fire World? I, Jianghu Shuang, am the first to disagree. The billions of cultivators in Green Fire World absolutely wouldn't agree as well. The ancestral experts from Green Fire World that died would be even more against that idea. We of Green Fire World would rather become ashes with the ancient battlefield. We strive to fight a life and death battle. Until the very last person dies, until the very last drop of blood is shed, we will never give in. Come on. If you have guts, come on in. His voice was like thunder reverberated in the universe. Behind Jianghu Shuang in Green Fire World, Large number of cultivators stood together as Jian Wushuang's hysterical laughter resounded in their ears. At that very moment, they clenched their hands together as hopelessness filled their eyes. They were roaring from the bottom of their hearts. They were born in Greenfire World. It was where their roots were. Countless ancestral experts saved Greenfire World for them. Forget about the further history. Merely tens of thousands years ago, when the troops of Jin Kingdom came, Greenfire World relied on themselves. Countless cultivators had advanced wave by wave and sacrificed countless experts. In the end, under Jian Wushuang's lead, they had won and survived. Then Greenfire World's potential was gradually unearthed and growing to prosperity. There were experts in Greenfire World who had put in painstaking effort, especially their leader, Jian Wushuang. Then, the so-called experts from Eternal Chaotic World wanted to take away their hometown and chase them to other territories? To make them leave their homes? They swore to not yield. Fight, fight, fight. All of us are willing to following Wushuang City Master to fight a life-and-death battle. Until the very last person, until the very last drop of blood. We will never give in. At worst, we will all meet death together. There were angry roars with unprecedented determination and will that resounded across the sky. Although the countless cultivators in Greenfire World were nothing before the experts from Eternal Chaotic World, they were willing to fight to the death. There was soaring war intention that shook heaven and earth. At the far front of Greenfire World, countless experts from Eternal Chaotic World gathered there. That very moment, the experts exchanged a look and became quiet. They could feel Greenfire World's war intention and their determination. Most importantly, it was their determination. Their determination to live or die alongside Greenfire World. It was obvious that Greenfire World wanted to fight till the end of the world with them. The crucial thing was that they had the capital to meet death together. Once the spacetime storm power exploded, everything would vanish into thin air. Maybe the few great emperors who were powerful could survive in the spacetime storm with their fierce power, but no doubt, the others would all die. The ancient battlefield would vanish into thin air too. What should we do? Abysmal Saint Master, Colored Glaze Great Emperor Zisu, Yenzun and the other great emperors from the other three-peak unique tribe gathered. Although the great emperors were powerful, they felt helpless then. They were helpless towards the spacetime storm. D***MN. I wonder who was the one who set up such a terrifying grand formation in the void surrounding this ancient battlefield. Most importantly, the grand formation is in the hands of Greenfire World, Abysmal Saint Master said in a low voice. Then spacetime storm had yet to stop and it grew stronger. There was no one who didn't feel fearful of the spacetime storm. With the threat of spacetime storm in Greenfire World, who viewed death as an option, many of them were thinking of retreating. However, they were unwilling to just leave like that. Just as the experts were caught in a fix, in the nearby void, a figure in gray robe walked over slowly. With white hair and white eyes, his skin was as terrifyingly fair. He was a man, but he had a beautiful appearance that put all ladies in Eternal Chaotic World to shame. Once he had appeared, everyone at the scene quietened down. Countless gazes turned to him. Emperor Bai. That's great. Mr. Emperor Bai came personally. The strongest one, Emperor Bai? Countless experts at the scene were surprised. Jian Wushuang looked at the incomer too. He's finally here? Jian Wushuang muttered. He sent a message to Emperor Bai long ago, but Emperor Bai didn't reply. Just then, when both parties were in a stalemate, Mr. Emperor Bai finally appeared. Jian Wushuang had a good opinion of him. However, his good opinion aside, Greenfire World had such great potential and Emperor Bai was widely acknowledged as the leader, the strongest one. Jian Wushuang couldn't be certain on which side Emperor Bai would take. Emperor Bai appeared and first looked the pearl in Jian Wushuang's hand. Through the pearl, he saw the changes in the surrounding ancient battlefield and his face grew solemn. Jian Wushuang, slow down the formation first, Emperor Bai said. Then everyone looked at Jian Wushuang. The great formation was still spinning and the extermination aura grew stronger over time. It was just like a knife above everyone's head. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked at Emperor Bai solemnly. He moved his willpower and the grand formation stopped. The void surrounding the ancient battlefield, including the spacetime storm, gradually slowed down. Chapter 1978 Sit down and discuss. As the extermination aura from the surrounding void slowly dispersed, the experts at the scene gradually let out a breath of relief. Emperor Bai looked around and said in a great voice, I already know what happened. If both parties continue to fight, it is definitely a fight with a risk of mutual destruction. I believe that there shouldn't be anyone who wished to see such a situation. So, why don't we both sit down and discuss this? Then, Emperor Bai glanced at Sanctuary Alliance and Great Emperors from the three special tribe. The Great Emperors in Sanctuary Alliance naturally didn't dare to go against Emperor Bai's order. As for the Great Emperors from the three special tribe, they nodded faintly too. They also knew that it wasn't the way to continue in a stalemate situation. Jian Wushuang, how about you? Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. Sure, Jian Wushuang nodded. If it wasn't necessary, he, of course, wouldn't wish to really use the killer move to meet death together with the experts from Eternal Chaotic World. That's great. Emperor Bai waved. There was a lofty palace that appeared from nowhere. There were layers of prohibition over the palace. Come on in, Emperor Bai's voice reverberated while he entered the palace first. Sanctuary Alliance and the Great Emperors from the three special tribes entered the palace one after another. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate and entered the palace as well. In the lofty hall, there were thrones towering. At the bottom half of the palace, there were dozens of thrones. The ruler of the bigger forces in Eternal Chaotic World sat there, including Emperor God Tianling from Soaring Heaven King Palace, number 1 Divine King from Divine King Island. The peak Emperor Gods were gathered there. Of course, these Emperor Gods, including Emperor God Tianling himself, were sure that they were only audience in the hall but had no right to speak. Those who had the right to speak were the Great Emperors who were seated on the upper half of the hall. Virum? There were shadows that substantiated one after another. Besides the Great Emperors who came from outside of Greenfire World, those who didn't come personally, their consciousness incarnation were there. The 15 Great Emperors on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list were there. The Great Emperors from special tribes were all there too. The most eye-catching thing was that the Great Emperors were all seated on the left side of the hall. On the right side of the hall, it obviously belonged to another camp. The camp was naturally led by Jian Wushuang. Next to him there was Lord Spirit Sound, King Luo Yu and Jian Yi. Compared to the other camp, Jian Wushuang was really much weaker. However, with the existence of Spacetime Storm, Jian Wushuang had great power too. As for Emperor Bai, he was seated in between both parties. Let's begin. Emperor Bai said softly, then he became silent. He even closed his eyes faintly. He obviously didn't intend to be biased. He had been aloof to begin with. He was always high and above. Although he was widely acknowledged as the strongest in Sanctuary Alliance, he was almost never involved in any matter in Sanctuary Alliance. An elder in a simple gray robe stood up. The gray-robed elder first bowed politely at Emperor Bai, then at other great emperors. Then he looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword Emperor, I am Tianqin. Ancestor Tianqin, Jian Wushuang greeted politely too. Ancestor Tianqin was in 4th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, which was right behind Abysmal Saint Master. Most of the matters in Sanctuary Alliance for all these years were taken care of by Ancestor Tianqin and East Royal Emperor. Besides, Jian Wushuang also knew that Ancestor Tianqin was a great emperor who had a good opinion of him and anticipated for him to grow stronger when he had risen abruptly back then. Hence, Jian Wushuang revered Ancestor Tianqin. I believe Sword Emperor knows that I have always had high hopes for your growth. I am certain that Sword Emperor will definitely be one of the greatest fighting powers in Sanctuary Alliance in the future. The truth is as such too. Ancestor Tianqin first gave him compliments, then he said, however, Greenfire World is unusual. Its value and potential is too great. For Sanctuary Alliance it would be of great help. Sword Emperor, you are also a member of Sanctuary Alliance. So, I wish Sword Emperor, you could consider on Sanctuary Alliance's behalf. Sanctuary Alliance would definitely remember your contribution. Jian Wushuang grew in distress. Ancestor Tianqin, I am really a member of Sanctuary Alliance, but Sanctuary Alliance is an alliance that is free without restriction. Your goal is to fight against the 2 dark forces and those underlying dangers. What I could do is to help when Sanctuary Alliance is in trouble. To put it in an indecent way, Sanctuary Alliance is nothing much to me. However, Greenfire World is different. It is my route. You want me to abandon my hometown for Sanctuary Alliance? That'd be a joke. Even if I agreed, 1 billion cultivators in Greenfire World wouldn't. Jian Wushuang looked determined and his voice was extremely cold too. Sword Emperor, is there really no space for negotiation? Ancestor Tianqin frowned. Of course there is. Otherwise, I wouldn't sit here and talk to you, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. However, to get the space from me you have to show your sincerity. You want the countless cultivators in Greenfire World to relocate and hand over Greenfire World? That's impossible. Don't even think about it. I wonder what Sword Emperor would like. Ancestor Tianqin said. Very simple. ID let the value of Green Fire World to be put to play in Sanctuary Alliance, but I have a few conditions, Jian said. What conditions? Ancestor Tianqin and the experts looked at Jian with full anticipation. The first condition is that Almighties to real gods in eternal chaotic world absolutely can't step foot in Green Fire World, Jian said directly. However, just as his condition was brought up, impossible. There was a great emperor that slammed the table and stood up from Sanctuary Alliance's side while there were many glares from the experts too. Jian you want Sanctuary Alliance to show sincerity and that is your attitude? Ancestor Tianqin stared at Jian as his face grew grave. Almighties to real gods couldn't enter Green Fire World. In other words, only cultivators of universe gods level and below could enter. What was the difference from that to no one being able to enter? That was Jian sincerity? Don't be in a hurry. Listen to me. Jian looked around with a cold look. Although the experts were raging with anger, they suppressed their anger to listen to Jian explanation. Actually, all of you misunderstood Green Fire World's value, Jian smiled faintly. All of you thought Green Fire World's value was its unprecedented cultivation environment that was filled with intense spiritual influence of heaven and earth. You wanted to make Green Fire World into a sanctuary that surpassed Thunderbolt Island. But it actually wasted all Green Fire World's resources. Chapter 1979 Condition. Wasted its resources? The experts looked at Jian. That's right. The cultivation environment in Green Fire World now is far beyond eternal chaotic world. However, the easiest thing to create in such a cultivation environment isn't peak expert but genius. Jian lowered his voice. The more outstanding a place is, the higher the probability of giving birth to a genius. Just like the ancient times. During ancient times, the geniuses were as many as the clouds. It was far beyond our era. If we really want to compare, our batch of geniuses would at most be second grade if put in ancient times. We couldn't even be considered as first-grade geniuses. I believe everyone should know this clearly. Hearing what Jian said, the experts at the scene became quiet. The ancient times, the most prosperous first era and the era that they were in, there were vast differences. Not only in terms of experts but also in talent. There were countless geniuses in ancient times. Any one of them in the current era would be known as a miracle. Sword Emperor, what are you trying to say? Ancestor Tianqin creased his eyebrows and asked. Very simple. If Green Fire World were to be made as a cultivation sanctuary better than Thunderbolt, it would only benefit the higher experts in eternal chaotic world. Although it would help to increase the fighting power of the top experts tremendously, it wouldn't make any changes to the roots. If Green Fire World's value were to be put on the younger geniuses, it would be entirely different. Jian voice was loud and clear. I suggested the condition to not let any experts above real god level enter because I wanted to turn Green Fire World into the #1 genius sanctuary in eternal chaotic world, a genius cradle. ID give out a huge territory in Green Fire World. Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and all forces in eternal chaotic world could send a batch of disciples to the territory. Then, as long as they never break through and become real gods, they can reside there. They can even reproduce there. Although there wouldn't be much of a visible effect in the short term, through generations of reproduction and inheritance, the later disciples would be more and more talented, more and more outstanding. There might even be people who possess a unique constitution in the future generation. Unique constitution? There were many who were surprised. That's right. As long as the cultivation condition is outstanding, some babies that have just been born will possess unique constitution, just like my father. He has the body of a sword spirit, which is rare. One of my brothers is a celestial elixir. This happened before Green Fire World transformed entirely. As the cultivation environment becomes more outstanding, the unique constitution born in Green Fire World is growing in number. Now, from what I know, among the cultivators in Green Fire World, there are more than 30 of them who have unique constitutions. There are many that have yet to be discovered, Jian said. This. Many experts were dumbfounded. Unique constitution was what countless cultivators dreamed of in eternal chaotic world. Having a unique constitution was equal to having the requirement to be a peak expert. Then, one was only required to work hard and obtain opportunities. For instance, the body of a sword spirit was born an expert in sword principle. If a celestial elixir reincarnated, he would only need sufficient resources to nurture. He was destined to become the top elixir maker. He could even become an elixir almighty. These were all unique constitutions that people were envious of. However, such constitutions were too rare in eternal chaotic world. Among the geniuses and experts in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, the number of cultivators with unique constitutions could be counted on one's fingers. But then, in Greenfire World itself, there were more than 30 of them who possessed unique constitutions in Greenfire World? Just how unbelievable it was. The experts' eyes became green with envy. It was just as how Jian Wushuang had described Greenfire World could totally become a genius cradle. If it was put to use appropriately, it could totally generate large number of top geniuses continuously. It could even be comparable to the First Era or even the ancient times. If these geniuses grew stronger, even if among dozens of them or even hundreds of them, there was only one who really grew strong for real, Greenfire World could still continuously produce more experts in eternal chaotic world. It was of a much greater use in making a cultivation sanctuary. Sword Emperor, even if what you said is true, you do not allow any almighties or even a real god to enter Greenfire World. Only cultivators below universe god level are allowed to enter. When they enter Greenfire World, wouldn't they be under your control? By then you can still do whatever you wish. From what I know, Greenfire World already has many real gods. If the cultivators from Sanctuary Alliance didn't even have any real gods in Greenfire World, wouldn't the cultivators from Greenfire World bully our men as they wish? Yen Zun suddenly said. No one needs to worry about this. I can guarantee that no cultivators from Greenfire World will step foot in the territory that your cultivators are having, nor will they get involved in any affair in your territory. Plus, if you are really worried, I can take another step back. I will allow you to pick 10 almighties to form an alliance of 10 to attend garrison duty all year round. However, these 10 almighties could only be Sir Gods or Emperor Gods, Jian Wushuang said. The surrounding people were in deep thought. Only 10 almighties and only Sir Gods and Emperor Gods. They naturally couldn't restrict Jian Wushuang at all. However, it wouldn't be a problem to restrict the cultivators from Greenfire World. With the 10 almighties, it shouldn't be a problem to protect those who were below universe god level. As for Jian Wushuang, he naturally had Sanctuary Alliance and experts from various forces to guard against him. He shouldn't act recklessly too. Everyone, this is my first condition. I wonder if all of you agree with it? Jian Wushuang looked around. The great emperors immediately started their discussion. After a short discussion, Ancestor Tianqin spoke again. Sword Emperor, you do know that eternal chaotic world is huge? Sanctuary Alliance alone has great power, let alone the special tribes. Hence, the territory required definitely isn't small. To allocate how huge a territory for Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and also various forces, we can talk about this later. I only want to know if everyone is willing to agree with my first condition to only send cultivators below real god level and have 10 Sir Gods or Emperor Gods form an alliance of 10 to step foot in Greenfire World. Jian Wushuang said. Yes, we can agree on this condition, Ancestor Tianqin nodded. Chapter 1980 Give an inch, take a mile. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with happiness when Ancestor Tianqin agreed. The first condition was actually the most important condition. The first condition included a crucial question, which was the control rights of Greenfire World over the years. If the experts from Sanctuary Alliance and special tribes were to be allowed to step foot in Greenfire World, then even if Jian Wushuang had the grand formation, it would be difficult for him to control Greenfire World. But now, only cultivators below real god level were allowed to enter. At most, only the alliance of 10 would be there. Regardless of which almighty Sanctuary Alliance chose, as long as there wasn't a great emperor, Jian Wushuang would be able to suppress them. Greenfire World's actual control rights still belonged to him and belonged to Greenfire Palace. The cultivators from Greenfire World were still the owner. The moment the first condition was done, Jian Wushuang's goal had been achieved. Now, he needed to figure out a way to get the biggest advantage for cultivators in Greenfire World. Sword Emperor, tell us your other conditions. Ancestor Tianqin looked at Jian Wushuang. The Sanctuary Alliance and the few special tribes actually had no alternatives. Jian Wushuang, or it should be Greenfire World's final trump card, was too scary. They didn't have the guts to corner them too much. My second condition is that, from today, all cultivators who are wandering in this ancient battlefield will not step foot in the surrounding area in Greenfire World. In other words, within the huge skull that you saw through the pearl earlier, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. The moment he said that, many experts' faces changed. Through the pearl, they could see that the huge skull where Greenfire World was located was the core of the ancient battlefield. On top of that, the skull was huge and shocking. It definitely contained boundless opportunities. The attraction of the skill to these experts was far beyond any other places on the ancient battlefield. There were many experts who had already made up their minds that they'd wander on the skull after they dealt with the matter with Green Fire World. However, the condition that Jian Wushuang suggested was to prohibit them from entering the territory of the skull. Everyone, I'm afraid you don't know that Green Fire World has been nurtured by this ancient battlefield for many years, over 40,000 years. Over the years, the cultivators from Green Fire World had been wandering in the surrounding ancient battlefield, and the region that they wandered was mostly around the skull. In other words, 90% of the skull was already searched through by cultivators from Green Fire World, including myself. As for the opportunity in the skull, Jian Wushuang smiled but didn't finish his sentence. The experts at the scene heard and they were surprised again. Although they didn't truly believe in Jian Wushuang's speech, they could make their own judgment. Green Fire World had been on the battlefield for such a long time, and they definitely would search for the surrounding opportunities and treasure. It was normal that they would search through the area around the skull. Battlefield that had already been searched through. Even though they didn't find any opportunities, the value was not as high as they thought it was. Plus, everyone, please don't only think about yourself. Think about your disciples and juniors. If they intend to grow in Green Fire World, they will need a training ground. But a universe god could easily wander around the dangerous places in Green Fire World itself. There was no effective training. They naturally only could place their hope on the ancient battlefield. Hence, the territory that the skull took up, live for your younger disciples and the cultivators in Green Fire World. What do you think? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He sounded reasonable. But in actual fact he knew clearly. At the territory where the skull was, there were boundless opportunities that had yet to be unearthed. However, he did so for the cultivators of Green Fire World. Of course, all forces in Eternal Chaotic World that allocated cultivators to the territory of Green Fire World definitely wouldn't reap the same advantages. The experts at the scene exchanged a look and they seemed a little hesitant. Then Emperor Bai, who sat in the middle, suddenly opened his white eyes. This condition is agreeable. Then he closed his eyes again. Emperor Bai spoke himself. Even though the experts hesitated, they never spoke again. They finally agreed to this condition as well. The third condition, Jian Wushuang looked at the surrounding people. I hope that the experts who wandered in the ancient battlefield would give a certain amount of doctrine gem or resources of equivalent value to Green Fire World as rewards. What? You are asking for doctrine gem? How could you? Get an inch, want a mile. Everyone's faces changed and a few great emperors stood up in anger. Jian Wushuang, we have already comprised. Aren't you going a little overboard now? Ancestor Tianqin said in a deep voice. Overboard? Am I really overboard? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Everyone, do you think this ancient battlefield could be so stable all the time? For you to wander and search for opportunities at ease? Why don't you think about the grand formation surrounding the ancient battlefield? Without it, how would the ancient battlefield be? Everyone stunned. Without the grand formation, they naturally knew the outcome. They shivered in fear at the thought. Because the grand formation restricted the surrounding spacetime storm and the ancient battlefield could be maintained without effect. Plus, the outstanding cultivation environment is also affected by the formation. You have to think about how many resources we Green Fire World has spent in order to maintain such an unbelievable formation. How much treasure? Do you think it's easy? Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Many kept quiet when they heard what he said. Especially those who were good with formations. The grand formation surrounding the ancient battlefield was simply unbelievable in their eyes. The stronger the formation, the greater the energy required to maintain it. The grand formation was so unbelievable. Hence, the resources required to maintain it would definitely be a sky-high number. Then Jian Wushuang added, the grand formation was a huge burden. Previously, our cultivators from Green Fire World took turns to wander in the surrounding ancient battlefield to obtain resources and barely maintain the formation. But then we handed over the ancient battlefield and only kept the territory where the skull was. The resources that we could get naturally diminished tremendously. At this time, if I didn't ask for resources from you, who else could I ask? Chapter 1981 Give Way. Jian Wushuang delivered an impassioned speech and spoke with confidence. He spoke with confidence because justice was on his side. There was a drastic change on the ancient battlefield and Green Fire World had such great value, it was all the work of the Grand Formation. Plus, the Grand Formation did stabilize the spacetime storm. If there wasn't the Grand Formation, everything would just be empty talk. However, he didn't share one thing. The Grand Formation wasn't maintained by the energy provided by various resources and treasure. It had merged into one with the spacetime storm. Hence, the energy source to maintain the formation was actually with the spacetime storm. It was also the brilliant skill of the person who had created this formation, Jian Wushuang's master, Xianyi. Over the years, Green Fire World had been manipulating the formation. In actual fact, they didn't need to spend any resources to manipulate the formation. He had said it required an enormous resource to maintain because he wanted to get more benefits for Green Fire World from the experts before him. Plus, whatever he said, the experts in front of him had to agree. As expected, East Royal Emperor from Sanctuary Alliance, who had studied intensively in formation, spoke. To maintain such a huge formation, the required resources are beyond one's imagination. Even to Sanctuary Alliance it wouldn't be easy. Green Fire World would require a decent amount of resources and treasure to maintain the formation. It is pretty reasonable. Although the other experts were unwilling, they had no choice but to agree. Sword Emperor, tell us how many doctrine gems? Ancestor Tianqin asked. Not many. Any almighty who enters the ancient battlefield once will need to pay 2,000 doctrine gems as payment, Jian Wushuang said. Pay attention. I meant per entry. In other words, regardless of how long you stay, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, as long as you don't leave, you only have to pay 2,000 doctrine gems. However, if you only stay on the ancient battlefield for a few hundred years or even a dozen years and you leave in between, you will still have to pay 2,000 doctrine gems when you enter again. I will allocate an expert to collect doctrine gems at the space gap that is connected to the ancient battlefield. The experts at the scene exchanged a look and nodded in silence. Only 2,000 doctrine gems? Any top chaotic real god who was rich could easily pay. To almighties it was nothing. So they could easily accept it. However, it was nothing if there was only one person paying 2,000 doctrine gems. However, the almighties from eternal chaotic world who could wander in this ancient battlefield numbered more than 1,000, and every one of them would pay 2,000 doctrine gem each. It would be a sky-high number if all added up. Plus, if they were to leave in between, they would have to pay doctrine gems again when they re-entered the ancient battlefield. To Green Fire World it was simply a huge income. Sword Emperor, we agree with your 3 conditions, Ancestor Tianqin said. Don't be in a hurry. I have a 4th condition. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. More? Ancestor Tianqin creased his eyebrows. Sword Emperor, don't you have too many conditions? Don't worry. The 4th condition has nothing to do with anyone's benefit. It is merely a personal matter. Jian Wushuang spoke, but his gaze turned cold. Green Fire World was obviously framed. We were nearly exterminated because of this. I naturally have to deal with this. Hence, my 4th condition is to wish for everyone to tell me, who is it that exposed the existence of the ancient battlefield and then pushed Green Fire World to the toughest point? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, with a tinge of murderous intention. The experts on the spot let out a breath of relief. They thought Jian Wushuang was going to bring up some strict conditions, but he was merely looking for the person who had exposed the secret of the ancient battlefield. It had nothing to do with them, so they naturally didn't mind. I know that person. There was a cold voice. Everyone looked to the source of the voice. The person who spoke was Colored Glaze Great Emperor. Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised at that. Colored Glaze Emperor was the first to reach Green Fire World among all great emperors. Plus, when she reached Green Fire World, she called out his name straight away. She obviously already knew the actual situation in Green Fire World, and someone had definitely told her. The person who spread the news about this ancient battlefield and schemed against Green Fire World is a Sir God in Colored Glaze Sanctuary who has just broken through. Sir God Xuedao, Colored Glaze Great Emperor said. Sir God Xuedao? The experts at the scene revealed confused expressions. They obviously had never heard of Sir God Xuedao. Sir God Xuedao is Emperor God Xiazin's junior disciple. Sword Emperor, you should know why he schemed against Green Fire World, right? Colored Glaze Great Emperor said. Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold and he understood. Emperor God Xiaxin was the first person who had discovered the ancient battlefield. But in the end he had died by Jian Wushuang's hands. Before Emperor God Xiaxin died, he had definitely sent a message to Sir God Xuedao, which had led to the following agenda. As Sir God Xuedao is an almighty from Colored Glaze Sanctuary, I wonder if Colored Glaze Great Emperor would stop me if I wanted to kill him, Jian Wushuang asked. No, Colored Glaze Great Emperor answered. Sir God Xuedao is very cunning. I was framed too. That's great, Jian Wushuang nodded. Sword Emperor, you don't have to do anything about Sir God Xuedao personally. Sanctuary Alliance will figure out a way to capture him alive and send him to you. Even if he is killed by accident, we will send his dead body over too. What do you think? Ancestor Tianqin said. Thank you, Ancestor Tianqin, Jian Wushuang thanked him and said, "That's all. As everyone agreed with my conditions, let's talk about the territory that Green Fire World will give out." Jian Wushuang immediately started another discussion with the great emperors. During the discussion, it was inevitable to go through haggling. But in the end they reached a mutual agreement. Green Fire World would give 30% of their territory to the junior disciples from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World, then they could continue to reproduce there. Green Fire World was huge and 30% of their territory was huge enough to take on a large number of cultivators. Of course, Sanctuary Alliance and Special Tribes initially wanted more territory, but Jian Wushuang was holding a strong position and it ended up with such an outcome after a fierce negotiation. Then, both parties reached a mutual agreement. Of course, both parties compromised in order to achieve a mutual agreement. However, they had no other alternative but to give way. After all, both parties had scruples. Chapter 1982 The Origins of Star Foggy Sea. Jian Wushuang represented the entire Green Fire World. Comparing Green Fire World to the entire Eternal Chaotic World, it was at a disadvantage. Green Fire World was too valuable. After Green Fire World was exposed, Jian Wushuang understood that Green Fire World had to give way. He used up all he could to protect the benefits of the cultivators in Green Fire World. Although Green Fire World gave out 30% territory, Green Fire World was finally under his control. They kept the ancient battlefield where the skull was, where the Green Fire World was located. On top of that, experts from various forces had to pay a certain amount of doctrine gems and supplement some resources that Green Fire World needed. That was good enough. As for Sanctuary Alliance and Special Tribe, because they were worried that Jian Wushuang would fight at the risk of mutual destruction, worried about the formation that blended with the spacetime storm, they had no choice but to compromise. Dealing with a spacetime storm that could instantly wipe out the entire ancient battlefield and all experts at the scene, they couldn't be aggressive. After they reached a mutual agreement, experts from various forces left and made their own preparations. One thing for sure was that Sanctuary Alliance, Special Tribes and various forces in Eternal Chaotic World had to discuss how many cultivators below real god level could head into Green Fire World. Also, they would have to discuss who would make up the Alliance of 10. All those would go through some arguments. Of course, that had nothing to do with Jian Wushuang. In the lofty palace, Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai, who closed his eyes and never spoke, finally opened his eyes. "Mr. Emperor Bai," Jian Wushuang immediately looked at Emperor Bai. "I never thought that your hometown would be on this ancient battlefield. If I am not mistaken, Emperor 13 should be formed on this ancient battlefield, right?" Emperor Bai asked. "Yes," Jian Wushuang nodded. As expected, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. He then said, "I heard that your power has improved tremendously over the years. How far away are you from the 7th step?" "I am very close," Jian Wushuang answered. "I see," Emperor Bai creased his eyebrows and said, "Although I know it is about luck to break through, I hope you could break through sooner. After all, Eternal Chaotic World is becoming more and more unstable. The two hidden dark forces continuously popped out one after another. If I'm not mistaken, in no time the two hidden dark forces will take major action." Jian Wushuang was shocked and he immediately nodded. "I understand." Jian Wushuang bid farewell soon after. After Jian Wushuang left the palace, he plunged in the direction of Green Fire World. Before he got close to Green Fire World, Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and the others who had been waiting for very long in Green Fire World greeted him. "Shuang, how did it go?" Jian Nantian asked closely. "Third brother." The others looked at Jian Wushuang. All their gazes were filled with anticipation. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. "It's okay." A simple reply made all cultivators in Green Fire World be filled with excitement. One should know that all of them viewed death unflinchingly and wanted to fight at a risk of mutual destruction. They had already prepared to die in the battle. But then, they were fine? Everything had been solved? Really? Wang Yuan found it unbelievable. Of course, Jian Wushuang smiled and looked at Jian Nantian. "Father, please gather all higher-ups in Green Fire World for a discussion." "All right." Jian Nantian nodded and immediately went to make the arrangement. Jian Wushuang brought King Luoyu and Lord Spirit Sound to a remote void. "King Luoyu, Lord Spirit Sound, thank you so much." Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Lord Spirit Sound shrugged but didn't say much. King Luoyu said solemnly, "Sword Emperor, you are welcome. We of Ancient God Tribe value bloodlines the most. You have our royal bloodline and you should be our new emperor. I wonder when Sword Emperor will follow me back to Ancient God Tribe?" "Ancient God Tribe?" Jian Wushuang couldn't help but smile. You can tell that I am very busy now. Wait for a while. Until Green Fire World and the ancient battlefield stable down, I will head down to visit Ancient God Tribe. Alright, this is my communication token. When Sword Emperor reaches Ancient God Tribe, send me a message directly. King Luo Yu passed Jian Wushuang his token and he left. From the beginning until the end, King Luo Yu had revered Jian Wushuang from the bottom of his heart. After King Luo Yu left, Jian Wushuang looked at Lord Spirit Sound again. Lord Spirit Sound, it has been so long. There are many things that I am confused about. I wonder if you could answer them for me. Sure. Go ahead and ask, Lord Spirit Sound replied with a faint smile. She knew that Jian Wushuang would definitely ask her some questions. She was well prepared. Lord Spirit Sound, you should know what I want to ask, right? Jian Wushuang looked at Lord Spirit Sound. Firstly, it's about where you are from. If I'm not mistaken, Lord Spirit Sound shouldn't be related to lineage of star at all. Previously you said that you controlled star Foggy C to select disciple for lineage of star. I'm afraid that's not the truth, right? That's right. I am not related to lineage of star at all. As for controlling star Foggy C, someone wanted me to do that, Lord Spirit Sound said. Who? Jian Wushuang asked closely. Sheni. You should know this, Lord Spirit Sound smiled. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he heard the name Sheni. As expected, Jian Wushuang sighed. He had already guessed so in his head. As for where I am from, I think you could guess it too. I am from the surrounding battlefield, as are the cultivators from ancient times that you were talking about. However, I was only a small figure in ancient times. I somehow or other got involved in the war back then. Back then, the war darkened the sky and obscured everything. Countless terrifying existences passed away. Although I got involved in the war, I was lucky. At least I survived, Lord Spirit Sound said. Although I survived, I was in bad shape. I was in a deep sleep in the depths of this ancient battlefield. I had no alternative until I met the mysterious expert named Sheni. He woke me up and helped me to recover my power. As an exchange, I have to control Star Foggy C on his behalf until someone can pass the final test in Star Foggy C. Then I will gain my freedom. As for the excuse of manipulating Star Foggy C on behalf of the Master of Star Palace, it was instructed by Sheni. I don't even know what lineage of star is, so why would I control Star Foggy C on their behalf? Chapter 1983 Turning Point. Actually, Star Foggy C was in Green Fire World so long ago. It should be Sheni that took it over through some method. I only needed to take care of Star Foggy C on his behalf and lied that I was taking care of it for lineage of star. As for the rest, you should know them. Lord Spirit Sound said and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and asked, as you are an expert from ancient times, do you not know Sheni? No, Lord Spirit Sound shook her head. I was only a small figure back then. If I were to be put on the battlefield, I would be just like an ordinary soldier, I might not even be a soldier. But as for Sheni, although I saw him back then, I felt that he was very weak, his skills were far beyond mine. I'm sure that he was a big figure back in ancient times. Such a big figure is not someone I would know. Jian Wushuang was astonished. Lord Spirit Sound and Jian were the same. They were only small figures in ancient times. The kind that drew no attention. Jian Wushuang was at least a spy back then. Hence he had heard of Sheni. Lord Spirit Sound had never even heard Sheni's name. I understand now. Thank you for telling me, Lord Spirit Sound, Jian said. Like I said, you don't have to be so polite. Lord Spirit Sound smiled. Oh yeah, I'll be staying in Green Fire World for a while. In no time, I will be wandering in the surrounding battlefield. This is my communication token. If you were to run into any trouble, send me a message. Okay, Jian Wushuang accepted the token straight away. In the vast void of Green Fire World, all rulers of various forces in Green Fire World, including the higher-ups, gathered together. In one glance, there were at least a few hundred people. Jian Wushuang sat on a lofty throne right in the middle of the crowd. Everyone, Jian Wushuang's voice was loud and clear. It spread. The experts from Eternal Chaotic World came and cast greedy eyes over Green Fire World and its boundless potential. They attempted in vain to conquer Green Fire World. However, as they are worried about Green Fire World's biggest trump card, they have already retreated. Plus, I had a discussion with them and we compromised and came to a mutual agreement. As for the content of the agreement, Jian Wushuang went through the conditions in detail. Then the void was in a temporary silence. Give 30% of our territory? Many cultivators in Green Fire World frowned. 30% of their territory was quite vast. Plus, There were countless cultivators that lived in 30% of the territory. To Green Fire World. It definitely was a huge price to pay. However, most of them understood that Green Fire World's strength was weak before various forces from Eternal Chaotic World. They were simply not worth mentioning. If the other party didn't care about Green Fire World's final trump card, Green Fire World might not even have the capital to negotiate. Then, Green Fire World had only lost 30% of their territory and they kept their location at the skull on the ancient battlefield. From then on, they would receive many doctrine gems and resources too. It was already a great outcome. They believed that Wuxia City Master might play a major factor in it. If it was any other person who had gone for negotiation, one should know that the strongest person in Green Fire World was only a real god. A real god dealing with a bunch of almighties, and even great emperors might not even lift their heads to look at the other party, let alone bringing up terms and conditions. Only the legendary Jian Wuxia from Green Fire World had the guts and had the qualifications to negotiate with the entire Sanctuary Alliance, the countless experts from Eternal Chaotic World. Father, Brother Wang Yuan, you go ahead and arrange for the 30% territory. Try to complete the reallocation of cultivators in Green Fire World within 100 years. If I'm not mistaken, the cultivators that Eternal Chaotic World sent will be arriving one after another the next few hundred years, Jian Wuxia said. Okay, Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan nodded simultaneously. Jian Wuxia took a deep breath and suddenly looked at the cultivators in front of him. What? Are you not happy with this? Jian Wuxia's voice was cold. He saw many people had lowered their heads. Of course they were unhappy about it. Green Fire World was their hometown, but they had no choice but to give the other party 30% of their territory. If it wasn't because of their trump cards, the countless cultivators in Green Fire World would have to leave their home to head to other territories. However, they didn't dare to say much. Actually, I feel the same. I am unhappy too. But I have no alternative. We of Green Fire World are at a disadvantage, Jian Wuxia said coldly. Eternal Chaotic World is much bigger than Green Fire World and they have many more experts. Almighties alone, there were more than 1,000 of them from Eternal Chaotic World who came to the ancient battlefield. On the other hand, there isn't even one Almighty that grows up from Green Fire World. Don't look at me. Although I have the power of an Almighty, I really didn't reach the level in terms of the realm. Jian Wuxia paused and then continued, with such power, what qualifications do we have to fight against various forces in Eternal Chaotic World and Sanctuary Alliance? Everyone went quiet. The law of the jungle, they knew the theory very well. Wherever they were, they spoke with fists. Jian Wuxia looked at everyone's expressions and then he smiled. However, don't worry too much. Green Fire World has just started to rise and we are really not comparable to Eternal Chaotic World. However, Green Fire World has great potential, far beyond the cultivators in Eternal Chaotic World. That is also the reason why they tried so hard to conquer Green Fire World. With time, everyone here, including the disciples under your lead, as long as they are willing to put in effort, the overall power in Green Fire World will advance by leaps and bounds. We can take back those that belong to us. Everyone clenched their hands when they heard his speech and their eyes were filled with hope. There was fighting spirit that ignited in their hearts. That scene happened to be what Jian Wuxia wanted to see. Regardless of what Green Fire World went through, it didn't matter. However, the fighting spirit of the cultivators in Green Fire World, their unyieldingness absolutely couldn't be diminished. As long as they continued to grow in their unyieldingness, Green Fire World would reach the level that he was talking about. Then Wang Yuan spoke again. Actually, although Green Fire World paid a great price, we removed the initial danger anyway. Yes, Jian Wuxia's eyes were shimmering with joy. The danger had been removed. Ever since he found out that Emperor God Xia Xian had discovered the ancient battlefield, he had been worried. Especially when the ancient battlefield in Green Fire World was exposed, Jian Wuxia became even more tense as he was worried that Green Fire World would take a damaging hit. He had been trying to figure out ways and he put in his biggest effort. When he was negotiating with experts from Eternal Chaotic World, he was also trying his best to get the biggest benefits for Green Fire World. Then both parties reached a mutual agreement and everything was decided. Although they had given out 30% of their territory, at least they managed to keep Green Fire World. We kept Green Fire World. I managed to keep it in the end. I risked my life back then for Green Fire World. I risked everything for all my ancestors. I didn't disappoint any of you. Jian Wuxia clenched his hands. At the same time, his constantly worrying mind finally relaxed. The relief wasn't only in his divine body but he was entirely at ease. But the sudden relief caused Jian Wuxia's heart to skip a beat. This feeling. Jin Wushuang's eyes were wide opened. He had experienced this feeling multiple times ever since he had started cultivating. He naturally wouldn't find it foreign. This was a feeling of having a breakthrough. It was time. He had been in ultimate real God stage for so many years, and it was finally time for a breakthrough. Chapter 1984. 1984 Breakthrough. Jin Wushuang had been too tense. He was too stressed. The life and death of Greenfire World had been upon him previously, and he hadn't dared to lower his guard and act recklessly. After all, with the difference of one step, Greenfire World would be doomed forever. Now Greenfire World was finally safe. The danger had been removed and there would be no trouble. Jin Wushuang finally relaxed. However, the sudden relaxation fully enlightened Jin Wushuang. The bottleneck in his body finally loosened up. He was going to break through. I have something urgent. I have to cultivate in seclusion immediately. Father, Brother Wang Yuan, please take care of the rest of the matter, Jin Wushuang exhorted. No problem, Jin Nantian and Wang Yuan nodded heavily. Jinny, assist them with all you can, Jin Wushuang commanded. Yes, master, Jinny replied politely. After that, Jin Wushuang immediately returned to his secret room in Wushuang City. In the secret room, Jin Wushuang sat there while billowing divine power swept out madly. A turning point is hard to come to. If I were to miss it, no one would know how long it would take until I got the next chance. Hence, regardless, I have to break through. Jin Wushuang clenched his hand and closed his eyes. He started focusing on getting onto the seventh step in reverse cultivation. Just as Jin Wushuang was breaking through in seclusion, Greenfire World and various forces in Eternal Chaotic World were making arrangements according to their mutual agreement. Firstly, Greenfire World gave out 30% of their territories. When the higher-ups in Greenfire World announced it and started execution, it stirred up a great commotion within Greenfire World. There were countless cultivators who were raging with anger. Especially the cultivators who were located within the 30% territories. There was a vast surge of public feeling. Many of them were unwilling and they caused short-term chaos within Greenfire World. However, the chaos gradually settled down as Jian Nantian and Wang Yuan led the 9 major forces to suppress and comfort them. The cultivators who were at the bottom might not have known the ins and outs of the story and thus they couldn't understand. But at least, the cultivators who were more powerful knew how helpless and difficult it was for the higher-ups in Greenfire World. The cultivators who were located within the territories relocated to other region under the allocation of the higher-ups. Within a dozen years, the cultivators within the 30% territory were completely relocated. Besides, the higher-ups from Greenfire World even set up a great formation within the 30% territory. They even told the cultivators from Greenfire World that they were prohibited to step foot in the 30% territory. As for the cultivators in the 30% territory, Greenfire World didn't care if they could exit. After all, besides the 10 Almighties, the cultivators in the 30% territory were all below real God level. Even if they came out, they couldn't dream about making trouble within Greenfire World. Within 100 years, Greenfire World had already completed all necessary arrangements. On the other hand, Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and various forces from Eternal Chaotic World went through a dozen discussions and it took almost a decade until they reached a mutual agreement on the number of cultivators that they could send. Then only they started preparation. When Greenfire World was ready, they selected 100 million of cultivators from various forces in Eternal Chaotic World to move to Greenfire World. 100 million. Sounded like it was a huge number. However, compared to the boundless cultivators in the vast Eternal Chaotic World, it was so few. It was just like a drop of water in the ocean. In any ordinary big world in Eternal Chaotic World, the number of cultivators was far greater than this number. However, various forces in Eternal Chaotic World knew that the first batch of cultivators to Greenfire World should have higher quality than quantity. In terms of numbers, 100 million cultivators could definitely increase by 10 or 100 times after reproduction. However, various forces had to ensure the first batch of cultivators that they sent possessed a certain level of talent. In other words, the 100 million cultivators had to be geniuses in their own force or sect. A total of 100 million cultivators. Just as they were transporting the 100 million cultivators into Greenfire World, there was a problem that arose. It was their travel route. Various forces in Eternal Chaotic World had originally intended to send their geniuses to Greenfire World through the space gap in Ancient Mystery Land. Very quickly, they realized that it was impossible. After all, the space gap wasn't a wormhole that had stable spacetime. Almighties or real gods who were more powerful could rely on their personal power to shuttle through the space gap forcibly. However, the geniuses weren't even cultivators above real god level. How could they travel through the space gap? The 100 million geniuses, there might be 90% of them who would die in the space gap. Just as all forces in eternal chaotic world were deeply distressed about that, Jian Nantian informed them another route to enter Greenfire World on behalf of Greenfire World. They had to enter through Dayu World and Snow Kingdom. When they arrived outside the spacetime storm, they could pass through Greenfire World formation to enter the ancient battlefield. However, according to Jian Nantian, it wouldn't be easy to open the formation. On top of that, they had to transport a total of 100 million cultivators. Hence, as an exchange, various forces in Eternal Chaotic World paid a large amount of Doctrine Gem to Greenfire World again as compensation. As the 100 million cultivators from Eternal Chaotic World resided in the 30% territory and started reproducing, Greenfire World finally settled down. From then on, Greenfire World and the cultivators living in the 30% territory lived their own lives without getting involved. Both parties were utilizing the environment in Greenfire World to grow. On the ancient battlefield, all experts continued to wander and search for opportunities. However, due to the previous agreement, no Almighties dared to enter the territory where the huge skull was located. Whoever barged in without permission and was detected would be exterminated by Sanctuary Alliance, special tribes and various forces. No one had the guts to go against the rules. The ancient battlefield finally steadied. The time flew past. In the blink of an eye, the agreement between Greenfire World and Eternal Chaotic World had been running for 3,000 years. Jian Wushuang had also been cultivating in seclusion for 3,000 years until then. Hong. There was loud thunder and Jian Wushuang, who had been cultivating in the secret room, suddenly quivered and his eyes shot open. There was unprecedented joy in his eyes. I spent 3,000 years and I finally leaped over. 7th step of inverse cultivation, chaotic supreme. I did it. Chapter 1985. 1985 Chaotic Supreme, the 7th step of inverse cultivation. Almighty level. In ancient times, the level was named as Chaotic Realm. In inverse cultivation, it was called Chaotic Supreme. Right at the moment that he broke through and leaped to the step, Jian Wushuang's divine body and divine power was transforming at a shocking speed. Especially his divine body. This feeling? Jian Wushuang was surprised. He realized that his divine body had started collapsing. Yes, collapsing. Without any influence from the outside, he had broken through and his divine body had started collapsing. Of course, such a collapse was necessary to be reborn. Virum. Jian Wushuang's divine body completely collapsed and became a bolt of energy that dispersed in the void. There was only his heart that was floating in the air, and the heart contained boundless light. Jian Wushuang's consciousness and soul were in the heart too. Then voila. An enormous amount of pure energy swept towards the heart from all directions. Jian Wushuang's divine body gradually recovered again. It first collapsed, then recovered. It was reorganization. Divine body reorganization, from limbs and organs to pores and cells, everything resubstantiated. Jian Wushuang also noticed that the reorganization was completely purely with divine power. Merely divine power had substantiated a divine body. Transformation. From the beginning to the end, he had transformed completely. The moment his new divine body was reorganized, Jian Wushuang could tell that his reorganized divine body was unusual. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was recalling the information about the 7th step inverse cultivation. The 7th step of inverse cultivation, Chaotic Supreme, completed the perfect chaotic divine body. A perfect chaotic divine body would be immune to poison, water and fire, and be immortal. The biggest difference between a 7th step of inverse cultivation cultivator and an ordinary cultivator was the perfect chaotic divine body. The perfect chaotic divine body was a constitution. A unique supreme constitution that could make everyone feel visibly moved. The constitution was enough to shock the world. Jian Wushuang knew about the 7th step inverse cultivation, and he also knew about the perfect chaotic divine body. However, he didn't know how impressive the perfect chaotic divine body was. Just then, merely at the beginning of his transformation, he was shocked. In the process of his divine body reorganizing, time continued to fly past. In the blink of an eye, 1 month's time passed. His divine body completely reorganized and transformation ended. He truly became an almighty as an inverse cultivator. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit cross-legged. Then both his hands were like lightning. The original 7 ancient tribes star in between his eyebrows became 8. Just as he broke through and reached the 7th step, His ancient tribe bloodline enhanced again in the process when his divine body reorganized. Jian Wushuang didn't bother with the 8th ancient tribe star then, but he focused on his divine body. He looked at his hands as he felt the energy-fueled divine body. His eyes were glistening with joy. This is the perfect chaotic divine body? This is the 7th step of inverse cultivation? Jian Wushuang muttered, and he was excited. He had completed his transformation and he could feel his divine body was special. That was why he was surprised. Let's head out to give it a try. Jian Wushuang suppressed his excitement and appeared in an independent space. Jian Wushuang stood in the boundless dark void quietly while there was another figure in front of him. The person was Jian Yi. 3,000 years passed and Jian Yi's power was only slightly behind his peak status. He would need at least 2,000 years more until he recovered his power to its peak. Jian Yi's fighting power shouldn't be weaker than Abysmal Saint Master when he recovered to his peak. He might even be stronger than Abysmal Saint Master. Jian Yi, give me your all and fight with me. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands together when he said, "Yes." Jian Yi nodded. Then Jian Wushuang and Jian Yi launched an attack simultaneously. Jian Wushuang didn't draw his sword and only punched with his right hand. His fist brought about pure divine power after his transformation on the 7th step of inverse cultivation. A simple punch formed a terrifying storm and tore up the surrounding dark void at ease. Then it revealed a space black hole that was a few 100,000 miles wide. Jian Yi didn't go easy on him either. He punched and exploded his divine power of one in peak chaotic realm. Both parties didn't use unique skills or secret skills. It was purely a competition of strength. Bang. There was a loud bang and the independent space seemed to have exploded and it trembled in balance. Jian Wushuang's body grew heavy and he took a few steps back. As for Jian Yi, he only took one step back. Judging by his look, it was obvious that Jian Yi had the upper hand. "Jian Yi, did you exert all your strength?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Yes," Jian Yi nodded solemnly. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he heard that. Jian Yi was an expert from ancient times. His divine power was extremely pure. Even though he had yet to recover to his peak, his power was stronger than any ordinary great emperor's. But Jian Wushuang's divine power was only slightly weaker when they collided directly. From this result, it could be said that his divine power strength could be comparable to an ordinary great emperor's. I stepped foot on the 7th step and my divine power increased tremendously. Previously, my divine power was at Emperor God level and now I can compare to a great emperor favorably. Jian Wushuang smiled. One should know that it was purely the power of divinity. His strength was not only relying on divine power alone. "Jian Yi, let's do it again. You continue to use all your strength but be more careful this time," Jian Wushuang reminded him with a smile. Then there was billowing divine power concentrating in his right hand. At the same time, his fierce ancient tribe bloodline power had already reached the 8-star level. "Come on." Jian Wushuang laughed and took a stride forward. Then he punched directly without any other moves. Jian Yi also punched like lightning to give full play to his power. Bang. There was another loud bang. However, it was Jian Yi who stumbled and fell backward for quite a distance. Jian Wushuang didn't even take a step back. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang absolutely had the upper hand. As expected, there was excitement glistening in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he looked at his right hand. "In terms of divine power explosion, I can compare to an ordinary great emperor favorably. With the addition of ancient tribe bloodline power, my strength might be stronger by a notch than an ordinary emperor god's. Among the 15 great emperors on the Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list, forget about Emperor Bai for now, my strength might be able to compare favorably with Red Dragon King, who is in 2nd place. Chapter 1986. 1986 Unrivaled. Unmatched. Red Dragon King, the 2nd place on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. He was second to Emperor Bai. Red Dragon King was known for his fierce power. The other great emperors besides Emperor Bai were all weaker than him. In terms of strength explosion, Jian Wushuang was stronger than an ordinary great emperor by one notch. Although he might not have been able to compare favorably with Red Dragon King, he could at least be his match. Divine power is at this level. "Next, let me see my divine body." Jian Wushuang was very excited. His divine body had just been through reorganization. He could feel that his divine body was very strong and peculiar. However, he would need to check to know which level he was at. "Jian Yi, hit me with your all," Jian Wushuang said. "Attack you? Master this?" Jian Yi creased his eyebrows. "When I tell you to, you should just do it. You shouldn't be in doubt." Jian Wushuang smiled and he looked rather confident. Jian Yi didn't hesitate anymore. He moved and appeared before Jian Wushuang. He then punched Jian Wushuang's chest with his right hand. There was a fierce power that formed. Jian Wushuang stood there but didn't move an inch. His divine body wasn't affected at all. "Jian, how much strength did you use?" Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows and asked. 50%, Jian answered. He, of course, didn't dare to use his full force when he was attacking his master. "Do it again. This time use full force. On top of that, you can use unique skills," Jian Wushuang commanded. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but he was really confident. At least, the earlier punch was like scratching an itch. He didn't feel it much. "Yes." Jian nodded. Jian didn't hold back that time. He used 100% of his strength. There was a cloud churning around his body and boundless crimson cloud permeated his palm. Poin. The crimson palm slammed into Jian Wushuang without hindrance. The billowing power was terrifying. Even a peak emperor god could be easily killed with that slam. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to dodge the palm at all. Bang. The crimson palm slammed Jian Wushuang and it was 10 times stronger than Jian's earlier punch. Even so, Jian Wushuang only took one step back and his expression still looked rather relaxed. "This palm could barely move me. It is not enough to hurt me." Jian Wushuang shook his head. "How about this?" Jian Wushuang had a thought in his mind. The 5-gem armor that he had always been wearing shrunk and appeared on his palm. He then put it away in his Chenkuan ring. "I will not wear any armor, I'll just take the hit with my divine body." "Give it a try again," Jian Wushuang smiled. 5-gem armor was a treasure given to him by an ancient tribe expert, Wu Hun. Although it was broken, its defensive power was above any ordinary chaotic divine treasure. For instance, 5-gem armor could cut down Jian's attack by 90%. Jian naturally couldn't hurt him. Hence, he wouldn't be able to examine his current divine power strength. So, he decided to take off his 5-gem armor directly. "Master, are you sure about this?" Jian hesitated. "Don't talk rubbish. Just do it." Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian let out a sigh and he attacked again without hesitation. He used the same move, the same crimson palm that contained terrifyingly strong power. Again, Jian Wushuang didn't block the attack at all. The crimson palm hit Jian Wushuang's divine body again. Poin. The terrifying power impacted Jian Wushuang's divine body. The power strangled everything madly and it tore a big hole in Jian Wushuang's chest. There were some organs that shattered into pieces too. "Master, this..." Jian looked distressed. However, Jian Wushuang, who had a big opening on his chest, smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't die." Just as he said, Jian saw Jian Wushuang's divine power churning and recovered his open chest and also the shattered internal organs in an instant. Everything became undamaged again and Jian Wushuang's fighting power stayed at its peak. "Hit me again and this time hit me harder. It'd be best if you could shatter my divine body entirely." Jian Wushuang looked at Jian. Yes. Jian wasn't in doubt anymore. As Jian launched another attack, Jian Wushuang's divine body collapsed and became a cloud of crimson fog. Under such circumstances, an ordinary cultivator would have been dead. But Jian Wushuang, Virum? There was boundless divine power that reorganized. In an instant, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared in the void again. As expected, Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. A perfect chaotic divine body is completely substantiated by divine power. As long as divine power is inexhaustible, no matter how great the damage to the divine body is, it can be recovered. Even if my divine body were to collapse entirely, it could be reorganized and resubstantiate with divine power again. Jian Wushuang was filled with excitement. As long as divine power was inexhaustible, even if the divine body were to collapse entirely, it could be reorganized. What is this? This is immortality. Back then, when Jian Wushuang had been on the 3rd step of inverse cultivation, Eternal Realm, he had a power that was extremely close to immortality. It was an unprecedented life force. As long as there was flesh, he could recover himself with time. However, as he was on the 7th step, he truly possessed immortality. Immortality allowed him to have no scruples during fierce fights. No matter how badly injured he was, even if his divine body collapsed, he could reorganize it and continue to battle. As long as his divine power was inexhaustible, he wouldn't die. Of course, when his divine body collapsed, it would be a huge expense to his divine power to reorganize it. Jian Wushuang noticed that he had used up almost 1/4 of his divine power whenever he reorganized his divine body. In other words, his divine body could at most be reorganized 4 times during a fight. But even so, he could be recognized as being in defiance of nature. He could reorganize his divine body 4 times. It meant that he had 4 extra lives. he could be killed for 4 times. Just how ridiculous was that? Plus, he was only on the 7th step of inverse cultivation and merely the first stage of the 7th step. It equaled Sir God level in almighty rank. Then he could continue to proceed to the 2nd stage, the 3rd stage. By then his divine power and divine body would improve further. When he reached the 3rd stage, the final stage of the 7th step, his divine power would be boundless. It would be enough for him to reorganize his divine body a dozen times or more. By then, immune to poison, water and fire, and he's immortal. This is the perfect chaotic divine body. Unrivaled. Unmatched. Jian Wushuang bellowed at the bottom of his heart as his eyes glowed with excitement. Chapter 1987 Exit Seclusion. Terrifying. Scary. It was absolutely accurate to describe him as unrivaled. Jian Wushuang finally understood how Emperor Bai could be high and mighty. He understood why the great emperors from the 2nd era didn't even have the courage to taunt him. He also understood why Emperor Bai wasn't afraid even though he had dealt with Emperor 13 and knew that his opponent might be stronger than himself. Because Emperor Bai had been unrivaled long ago. Emperor Bai was also an inverse cultivator and had already stepped foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation. Plus, he should be on the ultimate stage of the 7th step. His divine power was boundless and enough for him to collapse 10 times and to remain alive. On top of that, he had extremely strong power. Even though his opponent might be much stronger than him, it was absolutely impossible for his opponent to kill him. Because he was invincible, he was unrivaled. I just stepped foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation and my divine power could only support me reorganizing my divine body 4 times. I still can't be considered undefeatable, but at least I will be fearless towards the 2nd era. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. He didn't mention the ancient times or the 1st era. Merely in the 2nd era itself he was absolutely unstoppable. Dealing with the great emperors in the 2nd era like Red Dragon King, Abysmal Saint Master, Great Emperor Zissou and so on, even if Jian Wushuang couldn't win against them, he didn't have to be fearful of them because even if the great emperors were to join forces to kill him, it would still be difficult. Besides, after reaching the 7th step of inverse cultivation, there was a secret skill that Jian Wushuang could perform. The secret skill was naturally the strongest secret skill of body refinery by the ancient tribe, Immemorial Celestial Body. He had obtained the secret skill long ago but he hadn't had the qualifications to cultivate it. But now, the strongest secret skill of body refinery. Even compared to the secret skills of body refinery from ancient times, Immemorial Celestial Body could be listed in the top 10. Such a secret skill. Even if it is just the 1st volume, it would enable my divine body and divine power to reach a brand new level once I cultivate it. By then my power will improve tremendously too. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. However, although he had the qualifications to cultivate the secret skill then, he would need some time to cultivate the 1st volume successfully. I shall take my time. After all, I fully comprehended the 1st volume of Immemorial Celestial Body long ago. Even though there are a few procedures that are more difficult, I could definitely cultivate the 1st volume of the secret skill successfully within a few thousand years. Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang understood his constitution of the perfect chaotic divine body and also his current power. He didn't further verify them but exited seclusion. In the lofty hall, Jian Wushuang sat on a throne. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and the others gathered by his side. Shuang, judging from your aura you've broken through again? Jian Nantian looked at Jian Wushuang as his eyes shimmered with joy. I just broke through? Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile. That's great. They were thrilled with excitement. Green Fire World finally has an almighty, Wang Yuan cheered. Although Jian Wushuang was attending garrison personally duty in Green Fire World and he had Jian Yi under him, regardless of if it was Jian Yi or Lord Sound Spirit who had assisted Jian Wushuang, they weren't people from Green Fire World after all. It was only Jian Wushuang who was from Green Fire World. Although Jian Wushuang had great fighting power then, he had yet to reach Almighty Realm. Green Fire World had yet to give birth to an Almighty. Now they finally had. Father, you should be nearing a breakthrough soon, right? I could feel your soul power growing so quickly. I think you should be able to substantiate a substantive soul soon, Jian Wushuang commented. Should be soon. Within 10,000 years I'm guessing, Jian Nantian replied. Everyone was surprised at having more great news. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows too. Alright everyone, tell me what happened during the time when I was cultivating in seclusion, Jian Wushuang asked. Then, everyone immediately reported what had happened in the past 3,000 years briefly. In the past 3,000 years Green Fire World had faintly settled down. Various forces and experts from Eternal Chaotic World had sent 100 million geniuses to the 30% territory. After reproduction for 3,000 years, the number had increased by a dozen times. Just as Jianghu had expected, the people who were born in Greenfire World were much more gifted than those who had been born in other parts of Eternal Chaotic World. Plus, they were getting more and more outstanding through the generations. The 30% territory was given a name of Myriad Noble Region, while the remaining 70% territory was known as Greenfire Region. The two territories were bound by the agreement and they hardly had dealings with one another. They naturally had conflicts. On top of that, cultivators from both parties were growing at a shocking speed. Especially the geniuses. There were too many geniuses across Greenfire World now. It included many who possessed special constitutions. However, because there were too many geniuses, most of them would opt to train themselves in Eternal Chaotic World after they reached Universe God level. On the ancient battlefield, the passion of the experts from Eternal Chaotic World to wander didn't diminish even though 3,000 years had passed. There was a continuous appearance of multiple opportunities. There were many amazing ones too. It even stirred up many battles and countless experts fought over it. However, the occurrence of battles in order to get opportunities and treasures was only right and proper. All in all, it wasn't too drastic of an incident. Everything was calm. Jianghu understood what had happened in the past 3,000 years briefly and he didn't ask further. He had already passed down the affairs of Greenfire World to his father Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Ro and the others. Then Jianghu went to see three other people. They were Hall Master Yuan, Hall Master Gu Xan, and Hall Master Nye Yun. The three Hall Masters of Lineage of Star were there in Greenfire World. According to the agreement, besides the 10 Almighties who were in charge of looking after Myriad Noble Region, the other experts from Eternal Chaotic World above Almighty level were prohibited from entering Greenfire World. However, the three Hall Masters were special. That was because the three of them were Jianghu men. Hence, Jianghu had already sent a message for Wang Yuan to bring the three Hall Masters into Greenfire World when he knew they had arrived. Palace Master, you have finally exited your seclusion. Hall Master Gu Xan was obviously excited to see Jianghu. Palace Master, your aura, did you break through again? Hall Master Yuan's eyes glowed. I did. However, you don't have to announce this. Only the three of you need to know this. Jianghu smiled. That's great. The three Hall Masters were thrilled with joy. They knew that Jianghu could suppress Emperor God when he was at real God level. Then, as he broke through and leaped on the 7th step of inverse cultivation, his power had definitely improved tremendously. They believed that he could compare to a great emperor favorably with his power. Great Emperor. Lineage of Star finally had a great emperor. How could they not be excited? Chapter 1988. Losers are always in the wrong. How are our guest elders in Lineage of Star doing? Jianghu asked casually. Guest elders? Hall Master Yuan and the other Hall Masters exchanged a look. Then Hall Master Yuan answered, the guest elders in Lineage of Star aren't restrained. When they found out about the news regarding the ancient battlefield, many guest elders couldn't hold back. Even though he gave out the command personally to prohibit them from stepping foot in the ancient battlefield, they agreed on the surface. However, many guest elders went over in secret. Only Emperor God Jiaoyin, Emperor God Shenwu and two Sir Gods followed your command. This is within my expectations, Jianghu smiled. When he gave a command to the guest elders, it was because he knew he might need them. But in actual fact, the danger in Greenfire World didn't need Lineage of Star to get involved at all. Those guest elders who followed my command can enter the ancient battlefield and Greenfire World as they wish. As for those who didn't obey my command, ignore them. The danger in Lineage of Star has been removed long ago. Those guest elders that didn't act according to my instructions will only become our burden if they continue to stay in Lineage of Star, Jianghu said. I understand. I thought the same too. Hall Master Yuan smiled faintly and said, Palace Master, I have an idea. I wonder if I should say this. Tell me, Jianghu said calmly. Greenfire World is Palace Master's hometown, and they follow your lead. Similarly, Lineage of Star views Palace Master as our leader as well. Palace Master, do you think you could get more resources from Greenfire World on behalf of Lineage of Star? Such as, moving the old lair of Lineage of Star Universe Galaxy to Greenfire World? Hall Master Yuan asked. Hall Master Gu Xan and Hall Master Nye Yu looked at Jianghu with anticipation. 3,000 years had passed and the unique characteristics of Greenfire World were revealed. Everyone knew that Greenfire World was a true cultivation sanctuary, the cradle of geniuses. Countless experts were dying to cultivate there. However, the territory was only that big and there was a limit to the number of people who could enter to cultivate. Because of Jian Wushuang, many core disciples, including experts from Lineage of Star, could enter Greenfire World directly. However, the freedom to enter and exit wouldn't be as great as moving the old lair of Lineage of Star over directly. Hearing what Hall Master Yuan said, Jian Wushuang was surprised. Actually, after Jian Wushuang had found out how powerful Universe Galaxy was, he had the same idea. However, it was unrealistic back then. Hence, he didn't consider it again. But then, needless for him to say, the three Hall Masters suggested it instead. Jian Wushuang naturally could make it happen. I will immediately make some arrangement for Greenfire World to empty parts of the territory as the old lair of Lineage of Star. However, Universe Galaxy is so huge, it wouldn't be easy if we wanted to move it here, right? Jian Wushuang asked. Palace Master, you don't know that although Universe Galaxy looks huge, it is just a unique treasure after all. Palace Master, you could refine Universe Galaxy and bring it to Greenfire World. Then expand it gradually, Hall Master Yuan smiled. He was Universe Galaxy's weapon spirit. He naturally knew Universe Galaxy the best. That's great. Hall Master Yuan, you go ahead and make preparations then. When everything is ready, I will return to Starland to move Universe Galaxy over, Jian Wushuang said. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded heavily. Then Hall Master Gu Xan and Hall Master Nye Yun left too. As for Hall Master Yuan, his original body had stayed in Universe Galaxy as he couldn't leave. The one that appeared in Greenfire World was merely an incarnation that had formed temporarily. When the discussion ended, Hall Master Yuan's incarnation dispersed. In the void outside Greenfire World, a cold-looking middle-aged man, Emperor God Shiryu, stood and waited in silence. Then there was an elder in Taoist robe that walked out from Greenfire World. The elder in the Taoist robe was Jian Yi. Shiryu under colored glaze Great Emperor greets Mr. Jian Yi. Emperor God Shiryu bowed politely. Although Jian Yi was only Jian Wushuang's sword servant, his power was on display. He was a true great emperor. Hence, Emperor God Shiryu of course had to treat him with respect. This is what my master told me to deliver, Emperor God Shiryu said as he offered an ancient black tower. The black tower looked ordinary, but it was actually a powerful suppressing treasure. There was a person in the black tower. The person was naturally Sir God Xuedao. Sir God Xuedao spread the news in Eternal Chaotic World back then. He was the culprit who had pushed Greenfire World to breaking point. When they had been discussing terms and conditions back then, Jian Wushuang had said that he wanted Sanctuary Alliance to find the person who spread the news and send him over. Sanctuary Alliance naturally did it. Sir God Xue was very cunning and he was well hidden. In front of Sanctuary Alliance he had nowhere to hide. He was found very quickly and suppressed. Then, Emperor Shiryu sent him over personally after they had found out that Jian Wushuang had exited Seclusion. You can leave him here. Then you can leave, Jian Yi glanced at Emperor God Shiryu. Emperor God Shiryu nodded and let Sir God Xuedao out. After that, he bowed to Jian Yi and in the direction of Greenfire World. Then he left. In the vast void in Greenfire World, Sir God Xuedao with crimson hair and a crimson robe was tied up. Even his divine power was restrained. He couldn't even use any strength. He looked hopeless then. Virum? There was a figure that slowly appeared before Sir God Xuedao. You are Emperor God Xiezins Jr., Sir God Xuedao? Jian Wushuang looked cold as he looked down at Sir God Xuedao. Of course, Jian Wushuang didn't hate Sir God Xuedao as much as before. Although Sir God Xuedao framed him and schemed against Greenfire World, he was actually taking revenge for his senior after all. Jian Wushuang. Sir God Xuedao stared at Jian Wushuang. There was hatred in his eyes, but there was even more helplessness and unwillingness. He was only a Sir God. It was absolutely impossible for him to kill Jian Wushuang. He could only rely on the scheme. He had put in his greatest effort to scheme against Jian Wushuang. He had even led various forces in Eternal Chaotic World to Greenfire World. However, he had never expected that Jian Wushuang would survive even when he fought against the entire Eternal Chaotic World. You and I share no resentment, you were only taking revenge for your senior. You have your reasons to scheme against Greenfire World and I, but I have my reasons to kill your senior, Emperor God Xiaxian as well. There is no right or wrong between us, but losers are always in the wrong. Chapter 1989 Sword Geek. Losers are always in the wrong? Sir God Xuedao trembled and he couldn't help but lower his head. He lifted his head at the next moment, but then he shouted hysterically, Jian Wushuang, you are great, but don't get too carried away. I'm going to die at your hand. But in no time, you will absolutely die at another person's hand. It is only a matter of time. You will have to die. Sir God Shuedao was frenzied. Jian Wushuang saw and shook his head. There was sympathy in his eyes. Don't worry, I won't torture you. Go in peace. Jian Wushuang said and then pointed casually. There was a ray of light that pierced Sir God Shuedao's head straight away. Sir God Shuedao died on the spot. Jian Wushuang's face turned cold at the sight. Maybe you are right. It is only a matter of time until I die by someone else's hand. However, as long as the day has yet to come, I will try my best to improve my power. I will try my best to protect everything around me, Jian Wushuang muttered, and there was determination in his eyes. Just then, Virum. There was a loud whistle from the sword. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at Blood Mountain sword on his back and he realized that Blood Mountain sword was quivering vigorously. Jian Wushuang was connected to Blood Mountain sword at heart. At that very moment he could feel how excited Blood Mountain sword was. It was definitely because something impressive had appeared. What happened? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Ever since I received Blood Mountain sword from my master, this is the first time Blood Mountain sword is acting this excited. It isn't even a fierce fight, but it got excited without showing any sign. If I'm not mistaken, it should have sensed the existence of something. Jian Wushuang thought for a while, then he took out a token to ask. Very soon he found out the reason behind it. Earlier, when he killed Sir God Shuedao, there had been an ancient cave dwelling that had come into the world in the nearby ancient battlefield. In the ancient battlefield there was a variety of opportunities. There were naturally many cave dwellings that had been left behind by experts from ancient times. In the 3,000 years that Jian Wushuang had cultivated in seclusion, more than a dozen of cave dwellings were discovered in the ancient battlefield. Every time an ancient cave dwelling came into the world, it would stir up a fight among the experts. However, the opportunities in the cave dwellings, some were taken away but most of them remained in the ancient cave dwellings. It wasn't because the experts from eternal chaotic world didn't want the opportunities, but because they couldn't get them. The ancient cave dwellings contained a test. The tests were mostly very strict and no one could pass them. Hence, the opportunities that came along with the tests were naturally untouched. In the ancient cave dwellings that had just come into the world, there were a few experts that had actually gone in by accident previously and obtained some opportunities. However, as the opportunities were taken, the cave dwelling finally came into the world and it stirred up a shocking commotion, especially towards sword principle cultivators. When the ancient cave dwelling came into the world, not only Jian Wushuang, but also all sword experts who were wandering on the ancient battlefield, their divine weapon sensed it and naturally notified their masters. Juju Sword Mansion? The ancient cave dwelling is named as Juju Sword Mansion? Jian Wushuang went through the information that he had just obtained from Sanctuary Alliance. The first batch of experts who found the ancient cave dwelling naturally had a basic understanding of the ancient cave dwelling. They knew the origins of the cave dwelling and they also knew the opportunities within. Jiuju Sword Mansion contained boundless variations of sword principles. The sword principles were stored on 9 sword steels in a peculiar way. The 9 sword steels contained Jiuju Sword Mansion's biggest opportunity. However, the 9 sword steels were scattered in 9 corners of Jiuju Sword Mansion. It wouldn't be that easy to get them. In the beginning, the experts who discovered Jiuju Sword Mansion had found a sword steel by accident. Hence, it had led to the birth of Jiuju Sword Mansion. It is obvious that Jiuju Sword Mansion is aimed at sword cultivators. The 9 sword steels contained a large amount of sword principles. These sword principles are all from ancient times. Jian Wushuang licked his lips and he was obviously tempted. His power had reached such a level. Although he could rely on himself to create a sword unique skill that was powerful, it was limited. Compared to the shocking sword principle from ancient times, his unique skills were inferior. Hence, if he were to master a few sword principles from ancient times, it would absolutely raise the power of a sword cultivator. Just like the number sword cultivator in the first era, Sword Emperor Dugu. Although he was gifted with sword principle and he had created a sword principle that was suitable for him, his biggest trump card was still King Sword Principle. It was his true power that swept all obstacles away and enabled him to march over the first era unhindered. King Sword Principle originated from ancient times. Although Jian Wushuang had already mastered the sword principle, it wasn't easy to perform it. On top of that, he had only mastered the first move. So, he could only use it as his trump card. The sword principle from Sword Mansion Jiuju was different. The 9 sword steels combined large amounts of sword principle from ancient times. Every sword steel contained a large amount of ancient sword principle. To Jian Wushuang it was extremely attractive. Jian Wushuang called. Master. Jian figure appeared next to Jian Wushuang. Have you heard of a sword expert named Jiu from ancient times? Jian Wushuang asked. Jiu? Sword geek Jiu? Jian looked surprised. It seems like you heard of him. Tell me about him. Jian Wushuang was interested. Master, I have heard of Jiu. Among solo experts in ancient times, he was considered as a top-grade sword expert. Unless it was necessary, the top forces in ancient times wouldn't offend such an expert casually. Besides, Jiu was known as Sword Geek. He truly was geeking out over swords. He was passionate about gathering sword principles, and he wasn't interested in ordinary sword principles, only in sword principles that were exquisite and brilliant. For that, he often challenged the sword experts in ancient times. When he challenged them, he liked to bet with rare sword principle books. If his opponents lost, they had to hand him their strongest sword principles. Over the years, he collected many powerful sword principles. That is also the story of how got his name, Sword Geek. In ancient times, he might have been the one who was proficient in the most sword principles. Many sword experts who were more powerful than him didn't know as many sword principles as he did. Chapter 1990 Jiu Sword Mansion. Passionate about gathering exquisite sword principles, and he constantly challenged many sword experts to bet with sword principles. He was truly a sword geek. Jian Wushuang smiled. However, regardless of if it was sword principle, saber skill or other secret skills, it would be about quality over quantity. Even though he mastered countless sword principles, there were definitely many sword experts who were more powerful than he was. That's true. This sword geek, Jiu, was considered a top-grade expert in ancient times. But there was a distance between him and the peak in ancient times. Jian smiled. However, if he were to be put in this era, Jiu would definitely be a high and mighty existence. There were many great emperors in this era that would only be a nuisance in front of him. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, but he could understand why. Anyone from ancient times was, of course, not someone anyone in the second era could compare to. The sword geek, Jiu, was definitely a top-grade expert in ancient times. If he were to be in the current era, he could march over unhindered. Regardless, Jiu definitely possessed a bunch of sword principles. To me, they would definitely be useful. It seems that I have to fight for the 9 sword steals too. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Jian Wushuang made up his mind and immediately instructed, Jian, you stay back to look after Greenfire World. I will make a trip to Jiu Sword Mansion. Master, you don't need me to go with you? Jian asked. There's no need to, Jian Wushuang waved. Ever since he had broken through to the 7th step and possessed the perfect chaotic divine body, he had been different from before. He might have yet to catch up with Jian in terms of power, but in terms of defensive power, even 10 Jian's wouldn't be his match. He would be able to deal with everything if he headed over to Jiu Sword Mansion alone. If he really couldn't survive when he ran into danger, the outcome would be the same even if Jian helped. Jian Wushuang didn't delay any further but departed. Jiu Sword Mansion isn't too far away from Greenfire World. If I rush my journey at my top speed, I will be able to reach it in a few days. I should be able to make it in time. Jian Wushuang was looking forward to it as well. In the ancient battlefield, not only him but also many sword experts who had sensed the birth of Jiu Sword Mansion, received the news and rushed over simultaneously. There were even experts who didn't have expertise in sword principles that rushed to Jiu Sword Mansion. The 9 sword steals might be useless to cultivators who weren't good at sword principle. However, if they could obtain it and sell it, it absolutely could be exchanged for abundant resources. Hence, there were countless experts that swarmed over it like bees. In a barren land with no vigor in sight. Then there was a tall pavilion towering in the barren land above. The pavilion door was wide open and it was mysterious. Swoosh, swoosh. There were 2 figures standing side by side outside the pavilion. The 2 Sir Gods appeared and glanced at the pavilion before they entered it. There are another 2 who want it. Including the 2 of them, there are more than 100 experts in Jiu Sword Mansion. There are 105 of them. I reckon there are still people who are rushing here. There were 2 purple-robed figures hiding in the void outside the pavilion. They were paying close attention to the pavilion. The 2 of them were assigned to watch the pavilion by Sanctuary Alliance. Not only outside the pavilion, but there were also experts that were assigned to watch from within as well. Sanctuary Alliance would pay close attention to whichever cave dwelling came into the world or any opportunity on the ancient battlefield once it was announced to the public. For instance, Sanctuary Alliance was very concerned about Jiu Sword Mansion then. Just then, swoosh. There was a flash of flowing light that burst out of the nearby void. It didn't stop but leaped into the pavilion without any pause. The two purple-robed figures stared at the pavilion with their eyes wide open. This speed is so fast. This is too fast. Even an ordinary Emperor God wouldn't be able to achieve such speed. He at least should be a peak Emperor God to travel at such a speed. However, the person who just entered, I didn't see his face but his aura was only of a Sir God? That's weird. Although he was confused, he didn't think much. It looked like it was only a pavilion, but it was a mystery inside the pavilion. It was a huge, barren world. The world was so huge that no one could see its border. This is Jianghu Sword Mansion? Wuxia smiled while he looked around. The biggest opportunity in Jianghu Sword Mansion is definitely the 9 sword steels. Of course there are only 8 left. The 8 steels are scattered to 8 different corners. I have to take time to find them, Wuxia muttered and plunged to another direction in the void. He wasn't sure of the structure and environment in Jianghu Sword Mansion, so he could only wander around. But it was not long after he entered Jianghu Sword Mansion. Hong! There was a vigorous roar that sounded from the void afar. At the same time there were ripples of divine power. The loud roar and the ripples of divine power, Wuxia naturally didn't find it foreign. I just entered Jianghu Sword Mansion for a while. I shouldn't reach the 8 sword steels so soon, right? But the ripples of divine power are obviously from a pitched battle. Wuxia was surprised. He didn't hesitate but plunged in the direction of the source of the divine power ripples. At the end of the direction in which Wuxia plunged, swoosh, swoosh, there were 2 figures, a male and a female, traveling forward at a high speed. The 2 of them looked terrified, and judging from their traveling speed, they were running for their lives. Behind the 2 of them, there was a figure that carried an aura that had reached the level of Emperor God who caught up with them. I'm sorry that I dragged you down with me, a middle-aged man said as he wielded his sword and carried 2 on his back. It meant that he had carried 3 on his back originally. Now he was soaring with rage and there was fire burning in his eyes. You and I are best friends and we are wandering together. We naturally have to go through trials and tribulations together. Why did you apologize? It's just that we never expected that the golden-headed lion would be so persistent. Sir God Mou in a simple grey robe clenched his teeth and spat angrily. Blame me. I shouldn't have offended the golden-head lion back then. He is a madman. A madman? The middle-aged man carrying 3 swords said. Forget about that for now. We have to figure out a way to shake off the madman. Otherwise, Sir God Mou was distressed. Although both of them were powerful Sir Gods, the one who was after them was an Emperor God, a mad Emperor God. Chapter 1991 Sword Emperor's Arrival. Just as the 2 of them were thinking of how to escape, swoosh, there was a figure that suddenly plunged over from afar and appeared in front of them in an instant. Such speed. The middle-aged man who carried 3 swords and Sir God Mou were shocked. Then they subconsciously stopped. They looked at the incomer immediately. Tianjin, it has been a while, Wuxia smiled. Wuxia? The middle-aged man who carried 3 swords on his back, who was the master of Sky Sword Mountain, stared. Sword Emperor? Sir God Mou was shocked too. Just as they recognized Wuxia, they noticed the aura that was given out from Wuxia's body. Sir God? Sir God aura? Almighty? The 2 of them were surprised. One should know that Wuxia could suppress a peak Emperor God at real God level. Then, as he broke through his power, the master of Sky Sword Mountain and Sir God Mou took a deep breath and immediately became polite. Tianjin, you look like you are being chased? Wuxia asked. He had dealt with the master of Sky Sword Mountain before. Back when he was still a universe god, he had stayed in Sky Sword Prison under the master of Sky Sword Mountain for a few thousand years. It was the master of Sky Sword Mountain himself that had imprisoned Wuxia. However, Wuxia also knew that the master of Sky Sword Mountain had suppressed him because Hall Master Yuan had intentionally instructed him to do so. He naturally couldn't blame it on the master of Sky Sword Mountain. On top of that, Wuxia had improved tremendously in Sky Sword Prison. Later, when Wu Bai's cave came into the world, Wuxia traded 2 white blaze fruit in exchange for Fiery King's freedom. They had had dealings before and they could be considered friends. Yeah, someone is after me, the master of Sky Sword Mountain replied, embarrassed. Wuxia raised his eyebrows and looked at the void behind. He had felt a bolt of raging aura rushing over long ago. In the blink of an eye, the figure appeared before Wuxia. The person was wearing a golden top with messy hair. His beard and mustache were all golden and there was a fire burning in his eyes. The feeling it gave was like a raging beast. Judging from his look, he should be the golden lion, right? Jian Wushuang scoffed. Golden Lion was a nickname from experts of the same level. Those cultivators who were weaker would refer to him reverently as Emperor God Golden Lion. Emperor God Golden Lion was mad by nature and he was quite famous in eternal chaotic world. He had only been a top Sir God previously. He had broken through and became an Emperor God when had found an opportunity on the ancient battlefield. Many years ago I had a deep enmity with the Golden Lion. Hell stop at nothing to kill me. He was only a Sir God back then and I wasn't afraid of him. But now, the master of Sky Sword Mountain smiled bitterly. Then Golden Lion looked over like a beast looking at its prey. His hysterical laughter reverberated in the universe. Tianjin, why aren't you running anymore? Go ahead and run. They'll chase after you no matter how long you run away. No matter where you run to, I will not let you go. Golden Lion, it's my fault that I killed your disciple. But I didn't know his identity then. Plus, I already took the initiative to see you and apologized. Do you have to be so persistent? The master of Sky Sword Mountain roared. Haha. That's a joke. You know my temperament. As you have offended me, don't even dream about getting off the hook just like that. Between you and I, there'll be no end to this. Golden Lion roared coldly. You. The master of Sky Sword Mountain was pissed off. Jian Wushuang looked enlightened as he finally understood the ins and outs of the story. He immediately said, Emperor God Golden Lion, Tianjin and I are friends. Plus, he apologized to you about the death of your disciple. You could take advantage of him, but as for killing him, could you please let him off the hook as a courtesy to me? Let him off the hook? Who are you? I will kill whoever I want. It is none of your business. It's best if you move aside right now. Otherwise, I will kill you both if I am in a bad mood. Same goes to Sir God Mou. Golden Lion roared in anger. The master of Sky Sword Mountain and Sir God Mou heard and they were shocked. Both of them couldn't help but look at Jian Wushuang. Golden Lion, are you courting death? Sir God Mou roared from the bottom of his heart. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave as expected. A cold thump reverberated in the universe. Jian Wushuang didn't move at all. There was quite a distance between him and Golden Lion, but as he waved, there was a huge hand that appeared in the void near Golden Lion straight away without any warning. The hand contained a terrifying power and instantly froze the spacetime around Golden Lion. He couldn't even move an inch in time. Bang! The huge hand slapped Golden Lion brutally and Golden Lion let out a painful groan. He was slammed onto the barren ground and no one knew if he was dead or alive. The master of Sky Sword Mountain and Sir God Mou couldn't help but gulp at the sight, but they weren't surprised. Golden Lion was an emperor god, a top expert. But what was he in front of the legendary Sword Emperor? Sword Emperor challenged the entire eternal chaotic world alone. He had even forced everyone in eternal chaotic world to give in. Although it was mostly because of the grand formation in the spacetime storm, it showed Sword Emperor's capability. Plus, Sword Emperor had already broken through. Forget about an Emperor God who had just broken through not too long ago, even a peak Emperor God like Emperor God Tianling and Invincible Emperor God or Underworld God, had to bow down before Sword Emperor. Walala. There was a large number of shattered stones that dispersed and fell into the huge pit on the ground. There was a miserable figure who slowly got to his feet. The figure was naturally Golden Lion. However, Golden Lion had lost his imposing manner earlier. He only looked to be in a fix and a wretched situation. He also looked more fearful. His gaze was fixed upon Jian Wushuang and was filled with terror. He then slowly spoke. You are Sword Emperor? That's me. Jian Wushuang's face was cold. You're really him. Golden Lion's face changed. He was arrogant and obstinate. He was truly a madman and he didn't care about the story of the experts in eternal chaotic world. He had heard of Jian Wushuang but he had never watched any mirror image of him before. Hence, he couldn't recognize Jian Wushuang at first glance. The most crucial part was that Jian Wushuang had broken through and the aura given out was of Sir God level, not real God. Hence, when he saw a Sir God, he naturally didn't associate him with Sword Emperor until he attacked. Then he realized. He understood that he was in big trouble. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.